Tonight, it would terrify any parent, a shooting in a preschool parking lot.
David, I was in that exact location and also in the courthouse where a killer said an angel and a demon told him what to do. An all-new 2020 begins right now.
Oh my God,
an unlikely killer, an unlikely victim.
This guy's bleeding to death out here.
Twists and turns.
Yeah, he had a hat on and it almost like a beard.
Bombshells galore. It was just stranger than fiction.
The shooter came across the parking lot and raised his arm, pow, 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 pow.
Initially, people have no idea what's happening, right? They think it's just some lone gunman.
This person was targeted for some reason.
A young father of two senselessly murdered, dropping his child off.
Everyone was scratching their heads. Why was Rusty Snyderman murdered?
After the shooting, the suspect took off in that minivan and sped off.
What did you notice right away about him?
His black beard didn't belong. I mean, it was just, I knew it was a fake beard.
It just didn't make sense to me. It just seemed too elaborate and too Hollywood.
There were some previous incidences that were very odd.
He's running, I think he has a gun in his back pocket, and now he's running away. I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house.
And then all of a sudden, the entire investigation shifted.
That had to be pretty disturbing.
Looked over Rusty and I said, I'm going to get the justice for you. Hopefully get your revenge.
On a clear day with a bird's eye view, you can see all the way to Atlanta. It's big city problems in the distance. Here in Dunwoody, Georgia, crime and danger seem to be somebody else's problem. Until one November morning, this suburban bubble is about to burst with a bang.
It was a beautiful fall day right before Thanksgiving. People were running their morning errands. Parents were dropping their kids off to the preschool.
One of those parents is Rusty Snyderman, who's on his way back to his car after dropping off his 2-year-old son.
Witnesses told police that they saw a silver minivan pull up, a man hop out, walked up to Rusty, didn't say a word to him.
Walked up, he turned around, pow, 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 pow.
I heard a couple of loud pops and looked up and looked over and saw right in front of me shooting Rusty.
Shot him several times.
I mean, it was pretty much point blank range.
The barrel was either at or right at his skin when fired. There was actually soot deep into the wound from the projectile.
And then calmly and coolly walked back to his vehicle and took off.
It was almost surreal, the experience. There was no chaos or running or yelling or anything. He just walked back to his van. It didn't look like what I would think a murder would be.
They thought it was a movie. They were actually looking around for the cameras.
Everybody thinks they know what they would do. You don't.
Somebody's been shot and killed.
Which way did it go?
He headed east, Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon Road?
Yeah, he had a hat on and it almost like a beard.
Was he black, white, Hispanic?
I can't tell. He might have been.
It came over radio that there was a shooting. There was one person down, unknown status, and we all just went.
Oh my God, gunshot over here.
Somebody records a video. A doctor who happens to be nearby performs CPR, and a teacher grabs the children to get them out of harm's way.
There were a lot of witnesses to this shooting. Everybody saw it happen. The shooter made no effort to conceal themselves.
Honestly, you know, when the call came out, I was shocked. In Dunwoody, you know, everybody's pretty nice and everybody helps each other. So for something like this to happen, it was just a shocker.
The community was absolutely scared. Again, it's not something that happens normally. There's not a lot of violent crime in that area at all.
This guy's bleeding to death out here.
The police and the ambulance are on their way.
He didn't look conscious to me. He looked like he was struggling and trying to, you know, there was some movement, but I knew that it wasn't good.
There was a lot of blood everywhere. There were obvious gunshots to the patient. There was no pulse, and he was unresponsive. But that does not mean that you don't work this patient, because there have been times where we've been able to save patients.
He was white, possibly Hispanic. I would say he's about 5'9", 5'10". He's got a baseball cap on. It's a silver Caravan, almost looks like a Dodge. He had a hat on. It looked like he had a beard and a silver caliber gun.
Let me know when the officer gets right there with the patient.
And then who? Everybody's doing that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we did notify surrounding agencies.
I started hearing rumblings about a shooting not far from where I live, probably about a 10-minute drive from my house. And that in and of itself was shocking because it's a very safe community.
Let's go now to Channel 2's Mike Pachinik with the latest on what he's learned. Mike.
At the time of Rusty Snyderman's murder, I was a reporter at WSB-TV in Atlanta.
I'm Mike Pachinik, Channel 2 Action News.
His murder happened that morning. I came in the afternoon and was assigned to go back to try to find people who knew Rusty, knew his family, try to get to the bottom of who he was and why somebody would want him murdered.
How did you first learn about the Snyderman shooting? I mean, it was in the news, obviously.
Yeah, it was all over the news. A husband is shot and killed right after he drops his child off.
This shooting has shaken the school and the community to its core.
The last thing you think about is dropping off your child at school and something like this happened.
It's very, 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 very scary to happen.
Tragic. Every parent is scared. Every parent who's got a young child in daycare is scared. They didn't know what the motive was. So it was big news in Atlanta.
To me, honestly, it looked like it was professional. It was just the calmness of it. It didn't seem like it was a crime of passion. It was just very cold and calculated.
The shooting did happen at close range. There was no indication that Rusty was going to do anything or was trying to attack the person. It was a purely one-sided shooting, and close range to me said it was personal.
Right now, they are out actively searching for the man that shot this father. Rusty Snyderman's car was parked right there where you see that orange spray paint.
Well, it looks like a hit. You know, happened in broad daylight with witnesses around.
I absolutely didn't believe at any point that it was a random shooting.
It was somebody that looked like targeted him on purpose.
In the time it takes to count to 4, the innocence of a schoolyard, backpacks, snacks, goodbyes, shrouded in gun smoke, and now mystery.
The school and several of the businesses in this complex do have security cameras. Dunwoody police tell me right now they are actively looking at that video to see if they can get a better description of the suspect.
Initially, people have no idea what's happening, right? They think it's just some lone gunman?
You know, no one could come up with a motive. Random shooting at a daycare center right after a child has been dropped off. This person was targeted for some reason, but nobody knew what that reason was.
Still ahead, the clue you couldn't miss. What did you notice right away about him?
Well, I noticed his black beard.
The gunman's less than brilliant disguise.
Didn't belong. I mean, it was just, I knew it was a fake beard.
Here we are now at Dunwoody Prep. You were here, what was it, 14 years ago, I guess it was. Former Detective Andrew Thompson takes me back to the scene of the crime, just outside Atlanta. You think the shooter was parked over here?
Yeah, witnesses had the shooter park over here. As Rusty came around this way, he came around the front of his car, and he turned to open the door. The shooter came across the parking lot and raised his arm, pow, 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 pow.
Rusty Snyderman had dropped off his child, and as he was exiting, he was shot multiple times by an unknown assailant who jumped in his vehicle and fled the scene.
This was a huge case in Atlanta, and especially since it happened in the parking lot of a preschool, you know, a young father of 2 senselessly murdered, dropping his child off.
Just shocked that that happened here.
This shooting has shaken the school and the community to its core.
I was just
in disbelief. You know, you never expect murder to step into your life, and particularly somebody like Rusty. I not only didn't know of any enemies that Rusty had, I couldn't imagine him having an enemy because he was such a positive person.
It was my first homicide. I didn't really know what to expect when I came up, but I just clicked right into professional mode and remembered all the steps that I need to take that I learned back in the academy.
You start organizing, you start putting things in motion for witnesses and evidence, but you do something unusual. You bend down to the victim.
Yeah, after I got everybody where I thought they should be and got the base information, I came back over and I looked over Rusty and I said, I'm gonna get the justice for you. I'm gonna get this guy and hopefully get your revenge. I wanted to assure him that I was going to do the best that I could to bring the killer to justice. And I said, have faith. And I went and started doing my job.
I was tasked with going back and trying to just dig into the family a little bit, find out who they were and where they worked, what sorts of things were important in their lives.
He had a very outgoing personality. He was very engaging. He was very funny. He was fun to be with.
Rusty always had a lot of friends. That goes to Rusty's personality. You know, Rusty would leave an indelible mark on people. He had a personality that always would, bring you in.
And tell me about the family and what you learned later on about them.
Rusty and Andrea started dating in college.
The two met at Indiana University at a retreat for Jewish students.
By all accounts, they had a fairy tale romance, and when they finished school, Rusty got an opportunity to get his MBA at Harvard.
They had lived together for 7 years.
They'd been together a long time before they got married, and she was just part of the family then.
They were a good team.
She presents very warm, gives you a huge embrace. So, yeah, I had a good feeling about them.
They had a good marriage. They had 2 young kids. They had a beautiful home. They had a wonderful life. They had a lake house where they spent their weekends.
I've never seen him happier than being a dad. He was a big kid at heart himself, and he just adored his kids.
He was so natural. He just naturally had the skill to connect with them, and he would sit on the floor and play with them. And not everyone has that natural ability, but he really did.
Rusty is getting a lot more time with the kids because Andrea has taken a demanding new job. There's lots of travel. Florida, Colorado, even to Europe.
She was feeling good about it. I think she liked it. I think she was challenged. It was a good change for their family, so I was happy for them.
Police begin to look, of course, at the family as they begin to investigate this case. What did they discover about the couple? Are they happy? Are there struggles?
There was no indication of any strife in the home life. They were your typical successful, upper middle class, hardworking couple.
Now investigators turn back to that security camera video of the bearded killer in the minivan.
The key point of evidence we had was the daycare has a camera there that overlooks the central parking lot. And that was the only visual that we had of the suspect's vehicle driving around once, then coming back around again.
It's a silver Caravan, almost looks like a Dodge. He had a hat on, it looked like he had a beard, and a silver caliber gun.
Witnesses told police that they saw a silver minivan pull up to the scene, and after the shooting, the suspect took off in that minivan and sped off.
2 odd things about that van. 1, witnesses say the license plate was missing. And 2, when detectives rewind, they see that same minivan cruising the parking lot an hour before the shooting. So that morning, you pull in right here?
Yeah.
Larry Minogue was dropping off his son that morning. It was about an hour before the shooting.
As I was pulling into the parking lot, I noticed a van going in front of the building.
What did you notice right away about him?
Well, I noticed his black beard, and I could tell, as far as how dark it was, that it didn't belong. I mean, it was just, I knew it was a fake beard.
Larry says he even scolded the man.
I just looked at him and said, you don't belong here. You shouldn't be driving through this part of the parking lot at this hour.
Did he acknowledge you?
No.
Only later that morning does Larry realize that he'd come that close to a killer.
I hear it on the radio. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, I think I saw that person.
That had to be pretty disturbing.
Well, it was, and then I just called the Dunwoody Police Department and they said, can you come by?
Police release a sketch based on Larry's description. It's shown everywhere.
The thing that really struck me was they all noted that this was a really strange-looking beard on the suspect and that it looked fake.
Some people described it like an Abraham Lincoln beard.
Yeah, he had a hat on and it almost like a beard.
A manhunt now underway for the bearded killer. And why was Rusty Snyderman calling 911 just a week before his murder? Was there an earlier attempt on his life?
He's running. I think he has a gun in his back pocket, and now he's running away. I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house.
Everyone was scratching their heads. Why was Rusty Snyderman murdered?
They were really focused on chasing down any lead they got because at the time they had no credible information as to who had done this.
We got a lot of leads. Everybody was fielding phone calls for leads, and because you put something out like that, especially where the public is very interested, and you're gonna get a lot of calls.
In fact, a detective from across the country calls to compare notes about his case involving the murder of a Jewish woman just 2 days before Rusty's killing.
One of the most prominent publicists to the stars, Ronnie Chasen, was murdered, shot behind the wheel of her Mercedes in Beverly Hills.
Investigators are working on the theory that this was a planned attack.
The detective from Beverly Hills, California, gave me a call, and he was working a case that also involved people from the Jewish community. And he thought it was worthwhile for him to give me a call to see if there might have been a connection.
I know I got a call from the sheriff of a local county, Putnam County, that had a couple that was killed at their lake house. And so he called to see if there was some kind of connection. Of course, you know, there was no connection. So it does bring out a lot of those kind of maybe similar cases that people are, you know, searching for a lead on their case.
Then there's the tip from a woman so convinced she spotted the man in the sketch that she follows him.
When police put out the picture of the minivan and the composite sketch of the shooter, a woman at a nearby grocery store thought she saw the killer and started taking pictures to try to help police catch this person.
According to police, the woman tails the man into the store and back out into the parking lot, secretly snapping photos with her phone.
And as it turned out, it was not the killer. He had an airtight alibi.
With any investigation, they always want to start by finding out whatever they can about the victim. And so in this case, they dug into where Rusty had worked, what sort of business ventures he was involved in.
We spoke to his business partners.
Some detectives thought the murder looked like the work of a hitman, a murder for hire, possibly related to one of Rusty's past jobs.
We also looked into his wealth management job that he had briefly. That was could be a great indicator as to a motive for it. You know, if you're a multimillionaire and you end up losing millions of dollars, that could really flip a switch in somebody and want to get revenge on you.
Police quickly realized that this was not a business deal gone bad. They had no evidence to show that Rusty owed anybody money or that he had mishandled anybody's finances, so they pretty much put that to bed.
It just didn't make sense to me. It just seemed too elaborate and too Hollywood, if you know. And Rusty's not the kind of guy that's going to get in any kind of trouble. No criminal history, no anything.
Then this puzzling revelation. In the weeks before he was killed, Rusty Snyderman had called the police for help, not once, but twice.
If they can have emergency 911, what's the address of the emergency?
There were some previous incidences that were very odd.
About a month before Rusty Snyderman was killed, something strange happened at his house.
My garage door suddenly opened. We were concerned there may be somebody in the garage or in the house. My wife and I are both upstairs and my kids are in bed.
They were panicking a little bit that somebody was trying to break into the house.
Okay, relax. There's nothing to freak out about. The police are here, Andrea.
Then, about a week before his murder, Rusty calls 911 again. This time, it's more serious.
There was another incident where Rusty was starting to leave his home to go about his day, and he saw somebody behind his air conditioner on the side of his house.
And he notices a gentleman laying down beside his house.
When he confronted the guy ran away down towards the end of the cul-de-sac.
He's running. I think he has a gun in his back pocket, and now he's running away. I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house.
In the middle of that call, you can hear Rusty pausing to attend to his son.
I know, but I didn't get your water bottle. I'm sorry. He was wearing a hat and earmuffs, black mustache.
Odd, sure, but a lot of people own guns, and so that's not a direct indicator that the person was looking to kill Rusty.
Police respond to both calls and investigate, but no arrests are made.
It's another clue as part of our investigation, trying to determine, is that related to the fact that he was shot, or is it unrelated? You know, we don't know at that particular point in time.
About a month after the murder, investigators catch a break, uncovering the biggest clue in this entire investigation. A 4,000-pound clue, essentially.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest clue they had in terms of figuring out who did this.
And that's, you know, probably, as far as leads go, our top leads.
And then all of a sudden, the entire investigation shifted.
When they hit on that, that ended up being a gold mine for them.
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but Police Chief Billy Grogan and his team will settle for just one clue hidden in those crime scene photos. Anything that leads to the man in the sketch, the black-bearded killer who shot Rusty Snyderman and then escaped in a silver minivan.
Any sort of serious crime like this, you know, you start with the closest people to the victim and work your way out.
Investigators speak with Rusty Snyderman's wife, Andrea, several times.
Do you know anybody that drives a silver minivan?
No, I don't know anyone else that owns a silver minivan.
When they begin looking into this case, police talk to Andrea. What do they learn from her?
Andrea is totally baffled. She doesn't know who would kill her husband, why her husband would be killed. She's very distraught.
So the day after the shooting, Detective Thompson is asking Andrea to try to think of anybody who would have done this. Maybe an enemy of her husband? Somebody with a romantic interest in her?
Has there been anybody recently, when I say recently, within the past year, that has expressed an interest in you?
Yes.
Who?
My boss.
Your boss?
Yes.
Andrea says her boss had made a pass at her and that she turned him down, and that was that.
This is not an individual that would do something like this.
In a follow-up interview the next week, Detective Thompson wants more details.
Let's talk about your boss.
Okay.
How did he approach you with expressing an interest?
We travel for business together, and we were at dinner, and he said, you know, he thinks I'm fantastic, would love to have a relationship with me, but knows that that's probably unlikely, and That was sort of, I mean...
So it was a very polite...
Very.
Come on.
He really respected me as a person.
Andrea tells him that she and her boss remained on good terms, that they continued to work closely together.
We're close friends, he and I. Even once he said that, and I said no, I mean, we work together a lot, travel together a lot. I enjoy I admire him as a professional. I enjoy learning from him.
As for the idea of her husband cheating on her, according to Andrea, it was laughable.
He doesn't have time to go to the bathroom, let alone have an affair. And he loved me so much and made that clear a million times a day. So I laugh because it's
so absurd.
It's absurdly ridiculous.
Detectives now turn back to those ghostly security camera images, the killer's minivan. There's surveillance video that reveals a silver minivan.
Yes.
A 4,000-pound clue, essentially.
Yeah.
The van was the only solid evidence I had of the suspect. I looked at that video so many hours on so many days on my computer, just trying to find the fingerprint on that van that'll make it stand out.
How did they go about tracking down this van?
Well, we called the manufacturers of just about every minivan that was, looked similar.
First I went to Ford, I went to Dodge, I went to Honda. The last one I went to, which was a recommendation from one of our patrol officers, was Kia. But, I hadn't thought about Kia. So I went to the Kia dealership.
It was a 2011 Kia Sedona minivan.
The 2011 model of that Kia Sedona minivan had only recently become available.
There was right around 1,000 or so in the entire country. So that was a relief.
And it gets better. The number of 2011 Kia Sedonas sold in Georgia at the time is just a lucky 13.
We're calling every single person that owned one of these vans that is registered to. Everybody has an alibi. Nobody's in Atlanta, nobody's in Dunwoody.
So detectives go back to that videotape. They get it enhanced and they play it on a big screen TV.
And the first time I played it, the first time I saw this were 2 stickers on the front windshield that were offset from each other. That was my fingerprint. So now I had to figure out, what the hell are those stickers?
And there was a sticker in the window, and it looked like it possibly could be from a rental vehicle.
Turns out that Kia Sedonas were a very popular enterprise rental vehicle. And so when they hit on that, that ended up being a goldmine for them.
So it was this particular rental car company that had this specific vehicle in their fleet.
This leads to another important discovery. By chance, the barcode stickers on the suspect's van had been applied incorrectly. They were offset differently than stickers on other enterprise vehicles.
So they ended up getting the list of all of the 2011 Kia Sedona minivans that were rented on that date and the names of all of the people who had them rented. When they went to the actual locations to look at them, they were able to figure out which van it was based on those stickers because they weren't properly placed. They were like ever so slightly off instead of being parallel across the windshield.
I asked my rental car company contact, hey, when you have this year, make, model vehicle come into any of your lots, let me know. He said, absolutely. And he gave me a call one day, hey, we have a vehicle that might be what you're looking for up in this lot in North Georgia.
Detectives find the windshield stickers match those on the van at the crime scene. And then, bingo. A search of the minivan turns up synthetic hairs, just like those from a costume beard.
Beard fiber would be good evidence because we had several witnesses who said it looked like the suspect was wearing a fake beard.
Police now have the getaway car driven by Rusty Snyderman's killer. And better, they have the name of the person who rented the vehicle. A man by the name of Hemi Newman.
Who had the van on that day? Hemi Newman. I think we found our guy. Don't know why yet, but we found our guy.
Detectives now have their suspect right where they want him, in their interrogation room.
It's as if I'm a suspect. You're a suspect. Are you a suspect?
The man in the minivan, the man suspected of shooting Rusty Snyderman, is Hemi Newman. It's a name that doesn't ring a bell with police at first.
Now, we're hot on the trail of Hemi Newman. Now, we had to find him. We had to talk to him, see what he wanted to say.
And detectives do what anybody else might do.
I Googled his name and found his LinkedIn resume.
Surprisingly, the suspect, Hemi Newman, is a big executive at GE in nearby Marietta. Then lead detective Thompson gets a call from his bosses.
It's like, hey, we have Hemi. We're going back to the precinct. Meet us there. Great. So I rushed back to the precinct. By the time I got back, the sergeant and lieutenant were already in the interview room talking to Hemi.
Not many suspects bring an iPad to an interrogation room, but this one did.
You okay? What? You all right? It's unnerving to be in a room like this.
At the time, the Dunwoody Police Department is in an office tower, the kind of building where ordinarily an executive might feel right at home.
I want to get into the incident with Rusty on that day, November 18th.
You don't expect an executive with GE to be in our interview room, being interviewed about a homicide, but yet he was.
Listen, I'm going to talk to you about the day of the shooting, but as everybody else, I'm going to read you your rights on it. Your Miranda rights. Do I have to worry? I don't think so. I'm not worried.
Newman isn't under arrest. He's there voluntarily. But when police read him his rights, he hesitates.
You understand? Do I need a lawyer? Do you need a lawyer? I don't know. I'm asking you. This is what you need to ask yourself. These questions, do you feel like asking you questions about Rusty? No, not at all, but you're reading me this, and I've never been in a situation like this.
The two detectives that were in there, him and another one, were obviously playing off each other, trying to get what they could out of Hemi Newman.
In the beginning, we wanted to see why he had the van.
I mean, this is not rocket science. You're a smart guy. You're not signing away your mortgage. No, I'm not signing away my mortgage, but this is very uncomfortable. You're in the business world. You see papers all the time. I know, but you read Miranda rights, and it seems like it's as if I'm a suspect. And you're a suspect. Are you a suspect? I don't think I need to be a suspect. I shouldn't be a suspect. There's no reason why I should be a suspect, but you're reading me my rights.
He was very calm, unusually calm.
I want to know what happened on the 18th. I got to know. Okay, and I was at work.
I think he was trying to find out what we knew as much as we were trying to find out what he knew.
Do you know why I'm calling you? For help. I know. So you answered my call back. Right, to help. Okay. But getting rid of your Miranda rights isn't help. It's saying we can hold anything against you, and I don't know.
Initially, it's gathering a lot of information, but then it gets into the whole crux of the matter, and he's not admitting anything, denying it.
Hemi, this is what we got. We got that van on video the day Rusty shot, and I swear, the more I look at you, the more I see the person inside that van. I'm giving you every opportunity, man. I don't think things should have happened that way. You've got a heart, you've got a soul, man. You're not a criminal. Things just go wrong.
Executives are used to long meetings, but not like this one. A tiny room, one table, 2 detectives, a fuzzy video camera. It goes on for 5 hours.
You're here because that van was there. We know where. It was over there where Rusty got shot. Listen, look at me and don't doubt me. I'm telling you what happened. You got to admit to yourself what happened with that van. I'm telling you, you were there when Rusty got shot. Now, Hemi, you were there. I know you were. Hemi. How do you know I was there? Because it's on video. That van is on the video. The van was there. I've got it on video. You're at the parking lot. You're there with Rusty. The question is, why'd you shoot him? Why did it have to get done that way?
One investigator leaves the room and then comes back with photos of that rented minivan caught on camera at the crime scene.
This is the van, okay? And that's your van. I don't know what to tell you. I'm telling you that Hemi, look me. I'm not there.
As the interview went on, he was looking more and more guilty.
You're telling me you didn't do this? Hemi, I was not there.
Hemi Newman admits that he had rented a 2011 Kia Sedona on November 18th, but he denies that he drove it to the daycare and murdered Rusty Snyderman.
Are you prepared to tell me now you're not the guy? Because you haven't said that yet. All afternoon, you have not said, I did not damn do it.
You sit here and crowd me, you come up with all this stuff, you're accusing me of something, and it was obvious from the beginning, because I knew you guys were talking about the car, that you're somehow implicating me in this whole thing.
Newman says he's got an alibi, that he was at work at GE the morning Rusty was murdered. But investigators aren't buying it.
At that point, we had all the evidence we needed to place him in the minivan, say that nobody else drove the minivan. I went out and got the arrest warrant for Hemi Newman.
Go ahead and stand up for me. You've been explained to what's taking place tonight. You've been placed under arrest for the murder of Mr. Snyderman. Yes.
At the same time, while we were finishing the interview, we were confident we had our guy, and we had a whole lot more work to do.
No, it's far from close. You need a probable cause to make an arrest. You need a lot more to get a conviction.
Police say they've got the man who shot Rusty Snyderman, but they still don't know why, what, or who could drive a man like Hemi Newman to kill.
The big question that hung over all of this is what could drive someone to commit murder?
It was becoming more and more clear that there was a lot more to the story.
You've been placed under arrest for the murder of Mr. Snyderman.
Why would a late 50s executive wake up one day and kill somebody? Put a wig on and gun somebody down in a parking lot?
A young father of 2 senselessly murdered, dropping his child off.
This was national attention. You come back to a case that now is swarming.
This is what he did.
The man wanted someone else's wife, so he killed her husband.
The plan included me being there for Andrea after the fact.
He got caught, and all of a sudden he's insane.
I see dead people. They're telling me to kill people.
What was that all about? What was this description of a demon and an angel?
A demon that sounded like Barry White and an angel that sounded like Olivia Newton-John told him to do this? Like, come on.
We're talking about a self-proclaimed delusional individual who killed my husband.
How does she come across?
Not like a grieving widow.
Andrea Snyder, adulterer, liar, and master manipulator.
Where is the evidence that she was a party to the murder of her husband?
When investigators arrest Hemi Newman for gunning down Rusty Snyderman in this parking lot, the question so many are asking is why would a GE executive want to murder a father of two.
He got shot for one of three reasons: greed, revenge, or lust.
Detectives think they've got their person, but they're searching for which of these age-old motives may have driven Hemi Newman to kill. And they discovered a curious connection between him and Rusty Snyderman's wife, Andrea.
What's your relationship with Andrea? Andrea and I are friends.
Hemi Newman was Andrea Snyderman's boss.
That same boss that Andrea had mentioned to investigators.
How did he approach you with expressing an interest?
He said, he thinks I'm fantastic, would love to have a relationship with me, but knows that that's probably unlikely.
You can only imagine our surprise, when we had the paperwork from the Enterprise and Google your name, and you're her boss.
During the interrogation with police, they pressed him on the nature of his relationship with Andrea Snyderman.
I find her attractive, and I indicated that to her. And I said, I'd like to continue to develop the relationship. And she basically said, no, I'm committed to Rusty, and that ain't gonna happen.
They began to learn that Hemi Newman's marital life was not great. In fact, at the time of the shooting, he had moved out of his home.
Problems in his marriage and Newman's attraction to Andrea Snyderman, all of this and a potential motive for Rusty's murder begins to take shape for police.
Jealousy gets in the heart. Envy takes over. The mind starts working. And that life looks a hell of a lot better than mine right now.
Hemi Newman may have confessed to his feelings for Andrea Snyderman, but when it comes to a confession about his connection to the shooting, that's a different story.
I was not there. I did not pull the trigger on the gun just for Rusty Snyderman.
At the end of the interview, our detectives arrested Hemi Newman.
You're arresting him?
That's what I'm saying.
After his arrest, Newman pleads not guilty to a charge of malice murder.
Myself and a detective went to Andrea's house to deliver the news that we had arrested the person who killed her husband.
We made an arrest on the case.
Are you serious?
We have.
Do you have the person in custody?
That's all I said. Anything else?
Who is it?
It's a boss.
Are you kidding me? Please, no.
What did I tell you about it?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
The Dunwoody police called me and said we'd made an arrest. And so I said, who? As soon as I knew his name, it just made my skin crawl.
The murder trial for Hemi Newman, the man accused of murdering a father outside his child's daycare center in Dunwoody, is moving fast on this very first day.
All eyes are now on courtroom 5D here in the DeKalb County Courthouse as Hemi Newman's trial is about to begin. But before opening statements, a big surprise. Newman now admits that he killed Rusty Snyderman, but says he's not guilty because he was mentally ill when he committed the crime.
All right. All right, you may be seated. The state may proceed with his opening statement.
Boil it down to a sentence. The man wanted someone else's wife, so he killed her husband. He got caught. And all of a sudden, he's insane.
At this point in time, the defense will have an opportunity to give you their opening statement.
This case is not about what happened. We know what happened. This case is about why. Hemi was like a puppy in love. He felt that he and Andrea were like soul mates.
Even though Hemi Newman has now admitted to firing the gun that killed Rusty Snyderman, prosecutors still need to lay out their case. So they begin by tracking his movements the day of the shooting, beginning with his morning at GE before sunrise.
So he's up at his office at 5:30 something. Turns on his computer, does a few things, and without using the elevator, exits Defendant used the stairs and went out an unmanned back door. The cameras in the employee parking garage, they caught the defendant leaving in the silver Sedona Kia van.
Prosecutors argue that just 2 hours after Hemi Newman shot and killed Rusty Snyderman, he fills up his rental car with gas, returns it, and then heads back to work in his own car.
We even got video of the man dressed the same as he arrived at home.
Chris Lang, C-H-R-I.
Then prosecutors call Chris Lang to the stand. He was in the parking lot that morning, and in a dramatic display, DA Robert James demonstrates how Snyderman was shot.
There's a person that just comes out of nowhere and shoots him several times.
If you're laying on your stomach, okay, with your head towards me, okay. From where you are there, the shooter would have been right here.
We never did find the weapon that was used, but I guess we had the next best thing.
Say your spell your name for the records.
My name is Jan Da Silva.
Jan Da Silva was important in the trial as well.
Yeah, Jan was able to connect the dots because we could show that it looks like he committed the murder, but we didn't have a murder weapon.
Can you tell us where you actually listed the gun?
It was a website.
Mr. Da Silva said he had sold a Bersa 40 caliber Thunder pistol. I showed him the lineup and he immediately identified Hemi Newman as the person he sold the gun to.
Do you know who the person was that contacted you?
Yes, sir.
What was his name?
Hemi Newman.
I asked him, do you still have the test fire casing that comes with the gun when they sell it to you?
Typically, after somebody buys a gun, it comes with what's called a test fire casing, a spent bullet that essentially proves that the gun has been tested and works properly. Jan Da Silva said he actually had given that casing to his girlfriend, and luckily for investigators, she still had it. Prosecutors say that souvenir shell casing matches the bullet casings found at the crime scene, linking the gun to the murder.
What would have been about a week after he sold the gun to Hemi, Hemi came back up to the restaurant where Jan Da Silva was working as a valet.
He started off by saying, don't ever have a mistress.
Don't ever have a mistress?
Yes, sir.
And Newman tells Jan Da Silva something else about that gun he'd recently sold him.
He told me he just tossed it on the lake, Lake Lanier, and that it was okay because he made sure that it was tossed in somewhere where nobody can find it.
What does this all begin to tell them about Hemi Newman?
This was a massive cover-up.
All right, Mr. Deputy, we're in recess till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
A well-planned cover-up and proof, according to prosecutors, that Hemi Newman was very much in his right mind when he planned this murder. But now his trial is about to take a truly bizarre turn, one that includes some of the world's most famous musical names.
To the latest twist in the so-called daycare murder trial, a Georgia man accused of gunning down his romantic rival.
Tell me how intense this was. This was national attention.
It's the most intense case I've ever been involved with, and I've tried high-profile cases.
Bring in my jury, please.
The prosecution painted Hemi Newman as a lying, cheating man who was faking his mental illness, who wanted Rusty Snyderman out of the picture so that he could marry Andrea Snyderman, take their money and her children, and ride off into the sunset.
Hemi was broke. All those things came out in his interrogation. He was unhappy in his relationship with his wife.
You have all these expenses, and we have no money. I told my wife, I said, we don't have any money. We're broke.
The defense, meantime, painted a picture of a troubled man with undiagnosed bipolar disorder who had a traumatic childhood.
The answer of why in this case, it actually begins with Hemi's father.
His father was a concentration camp survivor. Very difficult man, very distant man, not very loving. Our belief was because of his bipolar disorder, he didn't have the capacity to know right from wrong at the time of the shooting of Rusty Snyderman.
To counter that argument, the state shows jurors videos of 2 different evaluations of Hemi Newman with a court-appointed psychiatrist.
What I've been told that I need to do, and that is that Rusty needs to die.
And this is where the trial takes a truly bizarre turn.
During the summer of 2010, the defendant claims that he was visited by a 6-foot dark demon. Also, he claims a 6-foot bright white angel came to him.
Is it a low voice, a high voice?
It's a deep voice. Almost like a very white.
That's right. According to Newman, the demon in his head sounded like the R&B legend behind hits like Never Never Gonna Give You Up, voice of the angel.
The Australian played in Greece. What's her name? Yes.
That's the best way he could describe it so that we could understand what he was saying.
What was that all about?
There are essentially 2 ways you can be acquitted if you commit a crime and you claim that you're insane. One way is what we call the right from wrong test, that you were so far gone that you don't understand the difference between right and wrong. The other way, which was the centerpiece of this trial, is that you were suffering from a delusion that compelled you to do the act.
When he comes, I think he's real.
Okay. Do you think he's real now? What do you think he is?
Now, I'm talking to you and sort of analyzing it.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Hemi Newman's defense says that part of his psychosis was a belief that Rusty Snyderman's children were actually his, and that he needed to kill Rusty to protect them.
The plan included me being there for Andrea after the fact.
Okay.
It wasn't only killing Rusty, but also the protection and being there for the children.
Hemi's goal in shooting Rusty was to save Rusty's children from the same kind of torment that he himself experienced as a child. He thought he was doing the right thing by killing Rusty to save his children.
And during those recorded interviews, Newman makes some surprising allegations about his relationship with Andrea.
We get us a very briefly. It was just a very brief kiss. That was it. And then I told her, I said, we're going to regret this.
Newman also discusses a business trip he says he took with Andrea, where he claims they ended up alone in a hotel room watching a movie together.
I was already pretty late. She put on her pajamas, I put on my pajamas, and we decided to watch the movie in bed. And we became intimate. And
You had intercourse? Were you alone?
No. And then I went back to my bed.
Andrea denies this ever happened, and Hemi Newman continues to maintain that he and Andrea never had a sexual relationship. But prosecutors think there could have been another motive: money.
Rusty Snyderman had a $2 million life insurance policy that really became a focal point for investigators.
He wanted Rusty's life, and he wanted Rusty's wife. He wanted the money because they're wealthy. The house was paid for. I think the house at the time was worth almost $1 million.
State calls Andrea Snyderman, Judge.
It's becoming clear that at this trial, there's one person everybody wants to hear from.
Do you have any idea why the defendant would have these feelings toward you?
I think I'm a pretty nice person.
And when Andrea Snyderman takes the witness stand, it's a very hot seat.
Do you know why Mr. Newman would have emailed a friend that you finally gave in?
No, I don't. We're talking about a self-proclaimed delusional individual who killed my husband.
More than 70 people would testify in Hemi Newman's trial, but the star witness undeniably is Rusty Snyderman's widow, Andrea. Once she takes her seat here, things quickly turn hostile.
State calls Andrea Snyderman, Judge. Did the defendant ever express his feelings for you?
Yes.
Do you have any idea why the defendant would have these feelings toward you?
I think I'm a pretty nice person. I'm a very caring person.
Were you and the defendant romantically involved?
No.
But for the next 2 days, the nature of Andrea Snyderman's relationship with her boss takes center stage at trial. Prosecutors going over details about their business trips together, reading from some very unbusinesslike emails between them.
It's about how you felt when we looked at the stars in Tahoe, when we woke up Friday morning in Denver, when we walked out of the restaurant on Thursday, when you took my hand and nestled your head on my shoulder.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Did what happen?
Did you wake up together in Denver, in Tahoe?
No.
Even so, Andrea testifies that when she and her boss traveled together, she allowed him into her hotel rooms 2 times. But she says that was before she realized Newman was stalking her.
Did he stalk you from inside your own room?
Stalking can take on many different meanings.
So that's a yes.
He was there to spend time with me.
In your
Evidently.
room? In your room?
Yeah, he did not share a room with me. Was he in my room? He might have been for a little while, but didn't share a room with me.
And whether Andrea recognized it or not, it seemed that Newman's behavior was becoming more and more unpredictable. Remember that 911 call Rusty made to police about a strange man lurking outside his home?
I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house.
Turns out that was Hemi Newman, an admission he eventually made during one of his mental health evaluations.
I told Hemi, I told like 6 other people also what happened on the side of my house, because it was bizarre and scary.
Normally, when you're called as a prosecution witness, you're there to help their case. They treat you nicely. They treated her as a hostile witness from the get-go.
I had no choice but to continue my career and my job.
Andrea Snyderman was defiant because both sides were coming at her, full bore.
The stalker that you've now testified about, you picked him up at the airport.
Yep.
You flew home with him.
That's correct.
You changed seats to sit next to him.
That's how we always traveled.
In one of the emails, she talks to Hemi about feeling like she's betrayed her family and expressing remorse over actions.
I turn to the second page of that email.
Yep.
Hemi Newman says, "Please never forget how much I love you." And how did you respond?
I know, but so do other people. I betrayed them all. I'm not trying to deal with that for now, but my burden, not yours.
What happened in Greenville, man?
We were holding each other's hands, and that's it. It may sound worse than it is, but to me, that was a betrayal.
So you're repenting in the email, at least, from holding his hand?
Yep.
She was pushing back on these allegations, and she wanted people to know unequivocally, I had nothing to do with this, I didn't have an affair, I didn't betray my husband, certainly didn't want him dead.
Do you know why Mr. Newman would have emailed a friend that you finally gave in?
No, I don't. We're talking about a self-proclaimed delusional individual who killed my husband. No, I don't question anything that he sent to anyone.
Here you have this widow of the victim adamantly saying that something did not happen, and yet both sides, the attorneys, were arguing that it did.
One witness after another takes the stand to testify about what they claim was the nature of the relationship between Hemi Newman and Andrea Snyderman. The jury even hears from a bartender in South Carolina who recalls serving the pair.
What stood out most was that he kept spinning her around to the salsa music. I know at one point she kind of was dancing for him. He pulled her back, groped her. They were groping each other, I know, because I kind of turned away.
At any time did you see the parties kiss?
Yes, I did.
How many times did they kiss?
I would say about 3 times.
Andrea is also asked about this trip, but says she remembers certain details differently.
We had some drinks at the bar, maybe 1, 2.
Did you dance?
I got onto the dance floor myself.
Did you dance with the defendant?
He came to join, and there was a time where he reached out his hand and twirled me around, and that's it.
Well, did you kiss him or did he kiss you?
No. No.
Looking at her testimony, it was sort of hard to remember who was on trial.
Yeah.
Whether it was Andrea Snyderman or Hemi Newman.
Yeah.
You all went after her, and the defense went after her.
Yes. Yeah. We had to, because we had to establish motive.
How does she come across to the jury?
Not like a grieving widow. Dishonest, disingenuous, a liar.
And there's something else that stands out for prosecutors, something they see as a discrepancy in Andrea's story about the day Rusty was shot.
Andrea Snyderman testified she didn't know Rusty had been shot until she got to the hospital.
At the time you called Don Snyderman, at that time, did you know what had happened to Rusty?
No.
Okay.
I didn't know what happened to Rusty until I got to the emergency room.
Okay.
No one told me what happened to Rusty.
Rusty's own father and one of her friends testified that she called them to say that Rusty had been shot.
She called and said Rusty had been shot. She was so sorry, and that she was going to Dunwoody Prep to find out what had happened.
And are you sure that she told you that Rusty had been shot?
Yes, sir.
She immediately screaming to me that Rusty had been shot, and she didn't know if he was dead or alive, and she was on the way to the hospital.
Again, Andrea denies that happened. And that same friend also testified about what she knew about Andrea's relationship with Hemi Newman.
Did Andrea admit or deny an affair with her boss at that time after the murder?
Denied it.
Based on all the time you've known Andrea, based on your observations of her mannerisms, when she told you no, did you believe her?
No, but my heart really wanted to.
And when Citron leaves the stand, there's another unforgettable moment in the courtroom.
Andrea went up and hugged her friend, who had just testified that she didn't believe her when she said she wasn't having an affair. So it was very strange.
It was so jarring that the attorneys made a motion to have her removed from the courthouse, and the judge obliged and barred her from the rest of the trial.
With all the allegations swirling around Andrea Snyderman, the question so many are asking, is the grieving widow on her way to becoming a criminal defendant?
It's clear to me that Andrea is covered in Rusty's blood.
Everybody was wondering, what's next with Andrea?
Dramatic closing arguments in the daycare murder trial.
Just what motivated Hemi Newman to kill a man outside of that Georgia daycare depends on who you believe.
The murder trial for Hemi Newman is moving fast.
The jury could have this case as early as tomorrow afternoon.
As prosecutors and defense lawyers begin final arguments in the case against Hemi Newman, the two sides have one thing in common: their scathing accusations against Andrea Snyderman.
Both sides claimed that she was an evil woman who played a role in her husband's death.
Either the angel and the demon were talking to Hemi and telling Hemi to kill Rusty, or the demon that he was cheating with.
The gun, in this case, was in Hemi's hand. But the trigger, I respectfully suggest, was pulled by Andrea Snyderman.
You had the defense team saying that she knew full well that Hemi Newman had mental illness, and she was sort of pushing him to do this. Even if she didn't expressly say, go kill my husband, her actions led him to do that.
Adulterer, liar, and master manipulator.
They were laying it all at her feet.
Yes. Our theories were very, very close. They were saying she led him all the way up to it, but didn't necessarily plan it. And we were saying, yeah, she was the motive for it, but we believe she perhaps had something to do with it as well.
Hemi didn't hide his crime from Andrea because Andrea already knew it.
As soon as this murder had taken place, she called Hemi Newman. She calls Hemi multiple times. On her way to the hospital, we thought that that was extremely odd behavior.
She told everybody that would listen that Rusty's been shot, but yet she wasn't told until she got to that hospital 2 hours later. The only way she would know that is if he told her.
Andrea says she called her boss for more innocent reasons, to tell him that something had happened to Rusty and that she'd left the office.
Rusty deserved to be treated with some respect and dignity. He did not deserve to be shot down in the street like some stray dog.
Robert James was forceful, he was loud, he would point.
This is what he did!
He was putting on a show, saying, no, he's lying about this mental illness. This was an affair. They both wanted him out of the picture.
They would have us believe that he's insane because he's having a good time at the club. And Andrea's doing this dance for him, and she's, and they're groping and they're grinding and they're getting it on and they're kissing and hugging. He's having an affair. He's about to go back to the room and do the horizontal mumbo. What man in America wouldn't be like, whoa, I'm about to have sex. It's great. Of course he's having a good time. If that makes him insane, then half the men walking down the street are insane.
Nobody is insane that plans a murder this way in the cover-up.
He knew he was wrong, and that makes him guilty, that makes him guilty, that makes him guilty all day, every day, because he is sane and he knew the difference between right and wrong.
Any minute now, Judge Gregory Adams should bring the jury in for that verdict. There was never any question that he was going to be found guilty of something because he admitted to shooting Rusty Snyderman. The question was, would he be found guilty but mentally ill or not guilty by reason of insanity?
Would he be sentenced to prison or to a mental hospital?
Deputy Moore, bring in the jury.
After deliberating for 8 hours, the jury is back with a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant as to count 1, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
We were devastated because he still goes into the prison system instead of a mental hospital.
Just come up here, Mr. Newman.
He had not testified at trial, and I think he wanted to be heard.
Your Honor, I prepared this statement to express my sense of loss for the death of Rusty Snyderman. I'm so sorry for their loss.
He apologized to his own, family, his children.
It is also a tragedy for countless family and friends who saw a person they loved, admired, and respected, who saw him arrested and shamed.
He talked about himself.
It was sort of all about him. Kind of felt like, woe is me, I'm sorry I got caught.
Ultimately, the judge sentenced Hemi Newman to life without parole. Throughout this case, Rusty Snyderman's family, specifically his brother Steve, were at the forefront. He was kind of the family spokesperson, and he didn't mince his words.
It's clear to me that Andrea is covered in Rusty's blood. We'll have no peace until everyone involved in Rusty's death is held accountable for their actions.
Andrea Snyderman releases a statement saying she was, quote, grateful for and relieved by the verdict, and describing her husband as an amazing man.
Everybody was wondering, what's next with Andrea? She took the stand in that bombastic way. Everybody thought that she had something to do with this. The question was, would police and prosecutors go after her? And about 5 months later, we got our answer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jovita Moore.
I'm Justin Farmer, and officers arrested Andrea Snyderman today at her family's home in Putnam County.
As soon as that indictment came down, those marshals pulled Andrea Snyderman out of her parents' lake house and hauled her off to jail.
She is facing charges, including the murder of her husband, Rusty Snyderman.
In layman's terms, if you help, you can be charged like the person that did it.
After Andrea's arrest, the jury foreperson in Hemi Newman's trial speaks out.
She was very angry when she was on the stand, and I thought, there's something. She really is hiding something here.
We don't know how she's involved, but she's involved. And we need to know, how can we have any peace when we don't know the truth?
But what can the prosecution prove?
Lies throughout the investigation and throughout the trial.
Then a bombshell development in Andrea's case before her trial even begins.
When the indictment itself came out and charged Andrea with malice murder, a lot of people were surprised.
I always had empathy for her, but at the same time, there were all of these unanswered questions. And so, those unanswered questions you want answers to.
You hit her with an array of charges.
Correct. We charged her with murder, obstruction, false statements, perjury.
Are you thinking that you're going to be able to put her behind bars for possibly life as well?
Yeah. I have some very strong circumstantial evidence, right? She's calling the murderer, who she happens to be having an affair with, moments after she finds out that her husband is shot. And then the night before the murder, there was a search on the computer for death benefits. The question is, do we have enough evidence that we can go from she probably had something to do with it to she did have something to do with it?
Where is the evidence that she was a party to the murder of her husband? All you have is that she may have lied about having an affair. That doesn't mean she had anything to do with her husband being murdered.
Indictments are built on solid foundations of evidence, and this one will fall like a pillar of salt.
After 3 weeks in jail, Andrea Snyderman is released on bail and pleads not guilty to all charges.
Anything you want to say just about how much you're looking forward to seeing your children?
The judge put her under house arrest. She couldn't even take her children to school.
On the eve of her murder trial, nearly a year after she was arrested, Andrea Snyderman's in court when the DA drops a bombshell.
I'm standing before the court, standing before millions of people perhaps, asking for the court to dismiss the case right before trial.
Robert James, the DA, had to go in front of the judge and admit that he did not have enough evidence to proceed with a murder case against Andrea Snyderman.
I believe that it would be unjust and unethical to go forward on a charge that I am not 100% sure someone is guilty of.
That can't look good for your office, though.
Oh, it looked terrible.
How hard was that for you, and how often does that happen?
It doesn't happen very often. If you say that the prosecutor is a minister of justice, then you have to own that it's not what you know, quite frankly, it's what you can prove.
Murder charges against Andrea may have been dropped.
Mr. Deputy, bring in the jurors.
But in August of 2013, prosecutors moved forward with her other charges, including lying on the stand and hindering the investigation into her husband's murder.
Across the board, we believe that she lied to police and she lied on the stand.
She hid evidence and she concealed it. She remained silent. She didn't tell them that she was a willing participant with Hemi Newman in this relationship. The fact that she called Hemi and the fact that she texted Hemi, she hid from the police. She suspected him immediately, but she hid her suspicion.
Her husband wound up dead, not because of anything she did. She didn't hide it. She didn't conceal it. She didn't know about it in advance. She did not try to deny the relationship. She gave them his name, and she has cooperated time and time and time and time again.
Was there a concern that Hemi Newman might testify against her?
I kept thinking up to the day we were going to start trial that we would find out there's this new surprise witness, but that never happened.
I was hoping Hemi would point a finger at Andrea to lessen his sentence. He never considered that option. Hemi continued to express his love for her.
After 2 weeks of testimony and multiple witnesses,
Excuse me, Deputy Garrett, if you could bring in the jury, please.
the jury has a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Andrea Snyderman, count 1, hindering the apprehension of a criminal, guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty.
Ultimately, Andrea Snyderman is convicted of 9 out of 13 counts against her. Just 18 months after testifying at Hemi Newman's trial, Andrea Snyderman is right back in this courtroom, this time for her own sentencing. She tearfully denies ever having had an affair with her boss, asking the court for leniency.
Please let me go home
to my kids. Mr. Newman changed my children's lives forever by killing their father. Please don't make them live without their mother. Thank you.
She blamed it on him, and she was the victim. She's not a victim.
Self-preservation is the only thing on her mind. She lied to her family. She lied to her friends. She lied to us. It was more important for this criminal to protect herself rather than find and convict her husband's killer. We urge you to keep the results of her conduct that led her to lie in the forefront of your deliberations.
The judge gave her 5 years in prison, and she's out in 10 months.
With credit for time served both in jail and under house arrest, Snyderman is released on parole. And just when everyone thought the final chapter in the saga had been written, a new twist sees a very different looking Hemi Newman back in court. In 2015, nearly 5 years after Rusty Snyderman's murder, Hemi Newman's conviction is thrown out. The Georgia Supreme Court finding that there was a violation of attorney-client privilege related to some of Newman's mental health evaluations.
The prosecution had no right to subpoena experts that we hired that we did not intend to call as witnesses.
A DeKalb County judge set Hemi Newman's retrial.
This retrial is expected to last less than a month. Insanity is at the center of Newman's fate.
In court, the formerly clean-cut GE executive appears markedly different.
Hemi Newman became Orthodox. So when he showed up to court, he was donning the Orthodox beard, he was wearing a yarmulke.
Once again, Newman's defense is arguing that delusions drove him to kill Rusty Snyderman.
You will come to the right verdict, and that is that Hemi Newman is not guilty by reason of insanity.
The jury doesn't buy it, once again finding Newman guilty and sentencing him to life in prison without parole.
Hemi will never get out of prison. He's gonna live his life regretting his actions, regretting that he has no relationship with his own children, regretting that he lost everything.
As for Andrea Snyderman, she's out of prison and no longer has a criminal record, thanks to a Georgia law called the First Offender Act that focuses on nonviolent crimes.
Even though a jury has found her guilty, when a defendant is sentenced under the First Offender Act, as Andrea was, once you have completed the sentence, you have no record. Andrea Snyderman, wherever she is today, under Georgia law, is not a convicted criminal.
So she essentially is a woman who has a clean record.
Yes. Once you have served out your sentence, probation included, then your sins, your crimes are erased from the record. And she wasn't given special treatment. She just wasn't treated any worse than anyone else.
It was extremely tragic. There are crazy people out there, and Hemi Newman's one of them. And her path crossed with his, and she will regret it the rest of her life.
Rusty was a wonderful brother. He was a great father. Sophia and Ian adored their father, and they were the light of his life. Every single day of our lives, there will be a hole in our hearts, in our lives where Rusty should be.
The Snyderman family, they really just at the heart of all of it wanted this to be about Rusty and his life and his love for his kids. And I think that was the heartbreaking part of all of this, is that they were just wanting justice for Rusty.
In my dreams, he comes waltzing through the door, just like he always did.
We miss him.
Every
He
day.
was the light in our life.
He had so much more to offer the world. The world is so much poorer because he's not here.
Rusty and Andrea Snyderman's two children are now 16 and 19 years old.
And Andrea Snyderman successfully petitioned to have her last name changed, as well as those of her two children. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
A vibrant young woman with a bright future.
She just was like a magnet. She was very, very pretty, but also very smart.
Is the victim of a truly disturbing murder.
He'd been struck on the head many times.
It's kind of the horror story.
The body itself appeared to have been washed. Jewelry had been put on her after the fact.
She had been staged for this suspect's desires. Who could have done this? Could it be somebody who likes her, somebody who has a fantasy over her?
Detectives hunt for a deranged killer.
We noticed bloodied palm print.
Police had collected about 100 different print impressions.
We could be looking for a serial killer.
Just when it looks like justice may never be served.
It was extremely frustrating.
A stunning discovery points to a murderer in their midst.
When we found out who it was like, are you kidding? Nobody could believe it.
Irvine, California is a peaceful community with a coastal vibe.
Irvine is very, very pretty. It is pretty much the hub of Orange County. The ocean's only 10 minutes away, and this is where everybody wanted to be.
Irvine has always been considered to be a very safe city and has not been known for violence.
On May 14th, 1979, Irvine's sense of safety is shattered when a man calls 911 to say he can't get a hold of his 22-year-old girlfriend, Savannah Anderson.
Earlier that day, her boyfriend went over to her residence to meet her at about 6 o'clock. He couldn't get any response at the door.
He went back home for a while, couldn't get a hold of her still.
He called the police department about 7:25 p.m. It was a welfare check. Her boyfriend indicated that she had not been feeling well, and so there was a concern that it could be a health issue. When the officer arrived, he met her boyfriend, Bill Mills, and another man, Ken Bergenson, who identified himself as her boss.
They explained they'd both come to the apartment to try to find out if she was okay because nobody'd been able to get a hold of her that day.
I was very fortunate to work with Savannah. Savannah was always prompt, and she didn't come that day. All day long, it was like trying to get a hold of her, no answers. By the end of the day, we were very concerned something might have happened because that wasn't like her.
The officer found the apartment was in fact locked up tight. There was no key available from the apartment office. The officer found out that a bedroom window nearby was unlocked from the inside, and he was able to open that bedroom window.
When the officer made entry, he was able to see a woman with a lot of blood around her, lying in bed, towels wrapped around her face and head. She was cold to the touch.
Both Savannah's boyfriend and boss are taken to the station for questioning, while homicide investigators are called to the scene.
When I walked in, it appeared to me that there was a struggle, a fight, and it was very clear that she was attacked on the bed, and she laid on the bed for some time due to the amount of blood that had pooled in that area. A lot of blood splattering against the back of the wall of the headboard.
She also had towels over her face. After the towels were taken off, her face was found out to be beaten very severely, excessively.
The towels were significant. It tells you that the killer may have known her and didn't want to look at what they've done.
It appeared that the body of the victim had been beaten with something hard.
She had multiple defensive marks on her arms, her hands, nail marks around the neck area, which would indicate that she also had a ligature that had been placed around her neck.
The legs were slightly raised as if some sexual activity may have occurred there.
Perhaps she was the victim of a sexual assault.
The degree of violence to Savannah's body was unusual. Did somebody do it because they were angry at her? If they were angry at her, is that because they knew her, they loved her, they hated her?
Based on the state of the body, Police believe Savannah was likely killed in the early hours of the morning. Looking closer, several details strike investigators as highly unusual.
Savannah had some jewelry on her. There was a necklace around her neck, and the clasp was at the front. There was also a watch on her arm that looked like it had just been put on there loosely.
We were surprised to see that those items were still intact on her based upon the brutality of her attacker. So it appeared that he may have just put those items back on her.
The body itself appeared to have been washed, as there's very little blood on the skin surface of the victim.
We noticed drag marks from the bed onto the carpet leading into the bathroom. Inside the bathroom, there was diluted blood with water around the sink area and also the bathtub.
She looked like she had been cleaned up and set in a particular position on the bed. It was staged for this suspect's desires. And I think that was important to get an idea of what this type of person was willing to do to Savannah's body, put things on her, put clothes on her, whatever.
It was very unusual for any type of murder, in my opinion. It looks like somebody wanted to make it look like she was fine and nothing was wrong.
Police find some important clues the killer left behind.
We noticed bloodied palm print leading from the bedroom into the bathroom. Palm prints are identifiable just like fingerprints. There were smudged, bloodied fingerprints on the toilet seat.
They were basically the only way that we'd be able to find out who the killer might have been. There was no DNA at the time.
Detectives find no murder weapon or any sign of forced entry.
We made the determination that the killer may have been known by Savannah and let him in through the front door. Another theory was through an unlocked open window.
After finishing up at the scene, detectives break the news of Savannah's death to her loved ones.
The parents lived in Utah. When I spoke to Savannah's mother on the phone, she was devastated by this. It was her only child. It's probably hard for most people to realize, first of all, what it's like to lose a child, let alone the only child you have. Savannah's mother said Savannah had made a collect call to her about 10 o'clock the previous day on Mother's Day evening. They had talked on the phone for about 2 hours. Savannah was very happy, good mood. That must have made it even more so difficult.
When I found out what had happened to Savannah, we were all totally shocked. My heart just hurt so much. How very sad this beautiful young lady, her life was gone, is very senseless, very, very hard to understand.
Born in 1956, Savannah Anderson grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and had big dreams.
She was 22 when she moved to Irvine. She came here looking for a better opportunity. She was very independent, and she wanted to do it on her own. I met Savannah when she was working here for Commercial Credit. Savannah was a secretary for the operations manager. She just was like a magnet. She was very, very pretty. I remember when people did come in the office, especially the men, she did attract attention.
Savannah was flattered, but she did have a boyfriend, Bill Mills, whom she met 3 months after moving to California.
She was more of a private person into herself as far as not one to just open up and tell everybody what she was doing. She was definitely on the shy side. When I found out what had happened to Savannah, I felt angry and just crushed and so hurt. My first thought was just how tragic this was. I just can't imagine.
It's kind of the horror story. Who could have done this? Could it be somebody close to her, somebody who knows her, somebody who likes her, somebody who has a fantasy over her? When you have a brutal killing like Savannah's case, detectives immediately looked for the people that are close to her, her boyfriend.
The fact that Bill, the boyfriend, was the one that called the police, is he innocently calling the police here because he doesn't know that something had happened to her? Or is he the one who may have done it, so he contacted the police to say, gee, something might be wrong, with the hopes that the police will go ahead and discover the crime and then say, well, it can't be the boyfriend because he called us here. Could it be almost a way out to try to point the finger away from you? It's just something you have to look into.
Coming up, police question the grieving boyfriend to see if he has something to hide.
His attorney advised him not to take a polygraph.
And detectives uncover more suspects.
Why is he here now at this time? That was suspicious.
Somebody was lying.
Another crime turns the investigation on its head.
This individual was responsible for 5 murders. Perhaps she was the victim of this killer.
And the perpetrator's identity leaves everyone in shock.
It was absolutely devastating when we found out who it was.
Her boyfriend, Bill Mills.
When you have a crime of passion where somebody is murdered, there are definitely times when a boyfriend who just got angry and upset did the crime.
The first thing we did was began meeting with Bill Mills so we could understand better about Savannah, his relationship.
Bill tells police he and Savannah started dating 6 months ago, and he was in love.
They had met each other in another apartment community. They had gotten along well.
He was about 9 years older than Savannah. In talking with him, had learned that he had just asked her to marry him.
Police are curious if something came up to disrupt the couple's plans for the future.
It was a large, violent crime scene. Did he do it because he was angry at her?
Bill tells investigators he last saw Savannah a day earlier on May 13th.
They had brunch together, and then he spent the day over at her apartment. During the interview with Bill Mills, we found out that Savannah and he did have sex that day. So that would be important later on in case there was semen found inside of her.
Bill told me on the 13th he left her apartment at about 10 p.m.
Once he did leave, what happened to him? Can anybody account for his activity after he apparently left her apartment?
He said he went home, he went to bed, and then to work the following day.
Bill says he and Savannah had plans on the 14th after they both got off work.
He went to her apartment about 6, knocked, couldn't raise her. He went back home for a while, then Bill Mills went ahead and contacted the police department.
Bill denies having anything to do with Savannah's death.
It appeared that Bill Mills was really in love with her, thought it was a very serious relationship. He was very happy with her.
Bill was cooperative. He tried to assist us as much as he could.
But there is one request Bill won't comply with.
There is a red flag. He was asked if he would be willing to take a polygraph. He contacted an attorney, and his attorney advised him not to take one.
We did ask if we could see his body, his hands, his arms, see if there's any indications of a struggle with anybody. But his body was clean. We asked him if we could go ahead and take his finger and palm prints. He agreed to let us do that.
It will be weeks before the results come in. In the meantime, detectives are forced to let Bill go. Next, they move on to another man in Savannah's life.
Part of the investigation and process was to meet with her boss, Ken Bergeson, who had been at the crime scene. In speaking with him, he said he had known her in Salt Lake and had offered her a job locally here.
Ken Bergeson also said that he kind of considered himself a father figure to her. He helped her move. They had talked many times, been out for drinks, been out for lunch and different things.
Could Ken have wanted more than a professional relationship with Savannah?
Was anything going on romantically in the present day?
I asked Ken where he was the night of May 13th, and he indicated that he was with his wife that whole evening.
We did contact the wife to verify that, and there's no reason to believe that he was anywhere but at his home that night.
After the interview, we asked Ken to submit his prints so they could be compared against the crime scene
We just let him go home that night after the interview.
The police questioned each one of us in the office. I worked for Ken Bergerson at the time. He was just such a nice guy and so concerned about her. She was living by herself, and she was just so beautiful. I just thought, somebody saw her. Somebody was either stalking her or something happened. But I was just so angry that somebody could possibly do something like this. It had to have been somebody I thought who was very sick.
There was nothing really that drew anyone's attention to any issues that Savannah had at work, and nothing came of it.
Police canvassed the apartment complex the next day, searching for witnesses.
We didn't find anyone that said that they'd heard any struggle or screams to corroborate when that attack may have occurred. There were 2 security guards that were assigned to the complex. It was a multi-unit, under construction.
So after I got the names of the security personnel who worked that night, which was about a week after we originally responded out there, I talked to the security guard first who worked the midnight to 6:30 shift. His name was Chuck Doyle.
According to Doyle, security was hired to ensure the residents were safe and to overlook any construction sites and that sort of thing for theft.
Chuck tells investigators on a usual shift he would drive through the complex and also patrol by foot.
I asked him how he found out about the murder of the woman, and he said he found out through the company. I asked him if he knew the lady who lived there, showed him 2 pictures, and he picked out the picture of Savannah Anderson.
When asked about his dealings with Savannah, Chuck's answer gives investigators cause for concern.
He indicated about a month prior that he'd helped Savannah gain entry into her apartment and slid a window open for her.
It was notable that Mr. Doyle had said he was aware that at least at that time one of the windows was unlocked.
Doyle said, "You'll find my fingerprints on Savannah's window, and this is the reason why." Immediately, we printed him. It really made me zero in on him as a potential suspect.
Security guard Chuck Doyle has drawn suspicion after admitting that his fingerprints are likely on her unlocked window.
She had locked herself out of her apartment before, contacted him while he was on the site to see if he could help her get into the apartment. The security did not have any pass keys. He found that a window was unlocked. He was able to slide the window open. He also said that he didn't go inside. Now, that could be for a couple of reasons. Could be perfectly innocent that he didn't go inside. Could also be to say, well, I didn't go inside if he may have somehow be involved in the death.
Had Chuck slipped in through the same unlocked window to kill Savannah? Police press him for his movements that night.
Chuck Doyle said that he reported for duty on the 14th at midnight, or was supposed to, indicated that he was about 10 minutes, 15 minutes late.
He was supposed to replace a security guard named Bob Sellers.
He drove by Savannah's and saw her talking on the phone. He thought maybe that was around 12:15 or so, 12:20, but was not certain.
He went and parked next to Bob Sellers' car. About 12:30, he estimated, Sellers approached. He got daily reports from Sellers, and then Sellers went ahead and got in his car and drove off.
When detectives ask what happened next, Chuck's answer raises even more suspicion.
He said he drove around a while, went back to the carport, and went to sleep, which would seem very odd.
He thought he probably nodded off for a while.
Doyle says that he was awoken by a car door slam. It was Sellers who had returned and invited him to breakfast. Doyle says it was maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. They went to breakfast at Spire's restaurant, a 24-hour cafe.
The cafe is just 10 minutes from the complex.
Doyle said that he was dropped off by Sellers at about 2:30 in the morning.
Chuck says the rest of his shift was uneventful, and he clocked out at 6:30 a.m.
There's just something really unusual about the sequence of events that's being described by Doyle.
Investigators are left with more questions than answers. Did Savannah die on Chuck's watch? Or was he the one who killed her? Hoping for clarity and to corroborate Chuck's story, they turn to the other security guard, Robert Sellers.
Robert Sellers enlisted into the Marine Corps at age 17. He's 22 now.
He was assigned that day to work from about 4 in the afternoon, and he was supposed to get off at about midnight that night. I asked him if he knew who Savannah Anderson was. He said he had talked to both her and her boyfriend that evening.
Sellers told me that he thought he saw Savannah around 10 p.m. on the phone.
Robert confirms that Chuck was late for work, so he didn't leave the apartment complex until around 12:30 a.m.
After leaving Doyle, he then went home, showered.
As a U.S. Marine, he was supposed to go to a Marine base at 6 o'clock in the morning.
He decided it wasn't worth trying to go to sleep, so he thought, well, I'll just go out to breakfast with Doyle. So that's when he returned.
Sellers told me that he came back to the complex about 3:30, which is an hour and a half or 2 hours after what Doyle recalled this happening. So there was this inconsistency between the both of them about what time they must have gone to the restaurant. Sellers said there's a waitress named Gail who waited on him. I took note of that. At the end of the Sellers interview, we asked if he would go ahead and give us finger palm prints, which he agreed to.
Investigators hope the autopsy report can help them pinpoint Savannah's time of death.
According to the coroner's report, Savannah Anderson died at approximately 2 a.m. on May 14th. The cause of death was strangulation.
She'd been struck on the head many times, found multiple contusions on her face. There was broken fingernails, a broken jaw, cracked teeth.
We did have biological fluids, semen that was found, but DNA was not in existence at the time, so we didn't have that tool.
My first thought was just how horrible to die like that. I cried and I was just very upset, just thinking that something like that had happened to a person that was just so lovely. It's just terrible.
If Savannah was killed at 2 a.m., which security guard is telling the truth? Was Chuck really off-site like he claimed? Or was Robert right, meaning Chuck was at the apartment complex when the murder took place?
There was a wide gap and discrepancy between their two stories and timing. So the two were brought in together to try and determine if someone was mistaken about times.
They both basically stuck to their stories. I wasn't sure which either timeline might have been correct, whether it might have been Doyle's or Sellers, because they were just too far apart. So we thought at that time somebody was lying.
The two security guards from her apartment complex are unable to agree where they were at 2 a.m. when Savannah was killed.
The timing is very sketchy between what Doyle says and what we learned from Sellers.
This is raising a lot of flags to me, because why don't they know where they were and what time they were?
Going over time discrepancies, Doyle said, well, I slept, I could be mistaken, I'm not sure. So Sellers seemed to be more credible time-wise.
According to Robert Sellers, Chuck was on duty at 2 a.m. and the pair only went to Spire's restaurant around 3:30 a.m.
I asked one of the patrol guys to go ahead and try to contact any waitress there that might have been named Gail to see if she recalled the security guys coming in there at all. They weren't able to find a Gail that worked at the Spire's restaurant, so we could not identify that particular part of the story. It looked like the best chance of us determining who the suspect was going to be through the fingerprint and palm print evidence left behind. At this time, we already had fingerprints and palm prints from the boyfriend, Bill Mills, the boss, Ken Bergerson, and from the two security guards, Chuck Doyle and Bob Sellers. And I felt that if we can find out if any of those were the palm prints, that's going to be the resolution of our case. We'd be able to determine who had done it. So we sent them away with high hopes that we're going to be able to resolve the case once we get the results back.
While waiting for the results, investigators dig deeper into Savannah's life, hoping something will point to her killer.
Savannah seemed to be a very likable person who had, from all reports, a good mind, good IQ, personable, funny, one that you would be very happy to have as a daughter.
She was very sweet, very sophisticated, quiet. She had very strong values and morals. You know, she was just not one of those that was going to be out looking for trouble. Just how she went and how young she went is so tragic. Our world is, it's cruel.
We interviewed neighbors. Savannah had been at the apartment complex about 6 weeks. Her contacts, friends were very limited. What I learned through investigation was Savannah had moved deliberately for the safety of having security on the premises.
She really wanted a place that felt safe, and the fact that they had security, she loved that aspect of it. She felt really good about where she was going.
2 months after Savannah's death, police received the results of the finger and palm print analysis from the scene.
I was really hoping we heard back from the crime lab that it's going to be one of the guys we'd already talked to.
In terms of identification and finding and identifying that individual, it was everything.
None of the prints that came back were any of the fingerprints submitted from the bloody finger and palm prints. Really disappointing, couldn't figure out why. It seemed like there should have been somebody in there that was responsible for it, yet the crime lab is telling us that these weren't the responsible parties at all. We thought we had some viable suspect, but we're told, nope, it's not them. Well, now what? Wow.
The results mean Savannah's boyfriend, her boss, and the 2 security guards are all cleared.
I was very discouraged, but thought, okay, we just haven't come across the perpetrator. He's out there. We'll find him. We'll identify him. I feel comfortable with that based on the palm print.
Detectives immediately looked for people in the area that maybe had criminal histories. They looked at people that had been arrested after that for similar type of break-in crimes. And if they had any suspicions whatsoever, they would get their palm print and their fingerprints, and they'd compare them to the crime scene prints and then rule them out if they didn't match.
3 months after the crime, police had collected about 100 different print impressions.
The palm prints didn't match. It was extremely frustrating to work through this.
With the case threatening to turn cold, detectives refuse to quit and take the case in a chilling new direction.
After going through potential suspects that were eliminated through the palm print, we began to examine that Savannah Anderson may be the victim of a serial killer known as the bedroom basher. This individual was responsible for 5 murders in the Orange County area at the time.
With a population under 2 million people, the number of attacks in a matter of months is troubling, and the similarities striking.
He would target young lone females between 17 and 35, ground floor apartments, open windows, open doors. Once inside, he would bludgeon, strangle, and sexually assault the females. So Savannah certainly fit that MO. And so we had to take a real strong look at perhaps she was the victim of this individual who had not been identified. We could be looking for a serial killer.
Detectives investigating the brutal murder of Savannah Anderson now believe she may have fallen victim to a serial killer.
Bedroom basher went after females in homes or apartments in the Orange County area, raped them, in at least one case, killed somebody by bludgeoning them, which is what happened to Savannah.
Based upon the number of bludgeonings in Orange County, which were 5, we felt that there would be another that would take place.
5 months after Savannah's murder, investigators' worst fears are confirmed when the serial killer strikes again.
During this time, there was a woman in Orange County that had been attacked, believed by the bedroom basher, who survived and was able to give a description to the police. A composite drawing was made. She described the perpetrator as a male, olive skin, pockmarked face, long hair, mustache, dark eyes, in his late 20s, early 30s. A task force was created in Orange County. Flyers were disseminated to the public and to patrol units. It resulted in multiple contacts of people who believed they knew who this individual was. Unfortunately, none of those resulted in the apprehension of the individual.
A year after the murder, with no arrests and a killer on the loose, women in the area live in a constant state of terror.
The community was definitely impacted by this terrible murder. The news was full of these kind of things, and it did create fear among people. The fact that I was living so close by, it's a little scary.
Any female who resided by themselves took extra precautions to ensure that their windows, doors were in fact locked. Every possibility we looked at, we were unable to make any headway in determining what happened to Savannah Anderson. It was extremely frustrating. There was no one else that we were aware of that could provide any insight and/or potentially could be a suspect.
3 years after Savannah's murder, her case remains unsolved.
After you go through tips, leads, you step back, you re-examine, you say, what did I miss? It's got to be there. What did I miss?
I started to believe that they just weren't going to find out. And that's terrible to think that something like that could happen and that this person is out there roaming around still.
2 more years pass until a rookie homicide detective takes a renewed interest in the case.
Savannah's case was the first cold case that I ever worked. I was familiar with it because I was in patrol when it happened, and I thought, well, nobody's looked at it for a while. Maybe I should look at it.
A friend of mine who knows Larry Montgomery very well calls him the evidence whisperer.
I was aware he was looking at the Savannah Anderson case, and at one point he came to me and we compared notes on it.
After combing through all the evidence, detectives revisit whether Savannah was a victim of the still unidentified bedroom basher.
The possibility that she was killed by a serial killer was definitely looked at. I was looking at anything that I could use to direct me to a possible suspect. I'm looking at what was done at the crime scene, what did the suspect do with the body, what was maybe in his mind because of what he did.
In comparing Savannah's murder to those committed by the bedroom basher, something just doesn't add up.
The one thing that stood out that was not similar was the cleaning up of the victim.
When I look at a crime scene like this, it's somebody who has a desire for Savannah. She appeared uninjured other than towels on top of her face. It wasn't the gore that he liked. He had to kill her in order to get her into a position where he could fantasize about having an actual relationship with her. This is a real girl now as opposed to a dead body. The question in this case is, who did it? All the people we've looked at and that looked good were not matching the prints. There was one point where I started looking at the security guards to see what they were doing because they were certainly involved in being there at the time. There were very big differences between what Doyle said happened and what Sellers said happened that night. And I thought that was very odd.
I thought at the time that I interviewed Doyle that one of the problems was he may have gone to sleep for a while. That would certainly account for the timeline being different or his uneasiness in talking to us about that particular time period.
Police quickly locate Chuck and bring him in for another interview. His story about what happened the night of the murder is the same, but a few details stand out.
Doyle said that he got to the site probably 10 minutes late. He had not been able to find the person he was supposed to replace yet, Bob Sellers. About 12:30, Doyle saw Sellers come with a shirt in his hand. And I asked Doyle, did you ever ask him why he was late or why he didn't have his uniform shirt on? He said, no, he never asked him that. He just figures he's on his own time, so he could probably wear whatever he wants.
That's unusual. That right there's a big red flag.
That's not the only thing that raises alarm bells.
Doyle said that Sellers had commented about wanting to have a drink with Savannah. He thought she was very attractive.
Detectives asked Chuck Doyle if Robert Sellers ever confided anything else to him.
Regarding the relationship between Doyle and Sellers, they weren't buddies. They didn't do things together. They weren't really close friends.
Following this lead, investigators asked Chuck if it was common for them to go for breakfast during a shift, like they did the night of the murder.
They never did that before. So why is Sellers there on a night when he's supposed to leave soon to go to work at a Marine base, saying, hey, you want to go get something to eat? It didn't seem to fit. But I had the paperwork that shows that he had been exonerated. It wasn't his print. But I saw all kinds of things that Sellers did that was suspicious. Why is he here now at this time? It all fits if he came back and did something with the body at that time. It all made sense time-wise. And that's when I decided we need to find those prints again and see if we matched them properly.
Cold case investigators suspect her killer has been hiding in plain sight the entire time.
I've got a suspicion that this guy, Robert Sellers, might be the guy because there's too many lies or mistakes. He's already been exonerated, and I didn't believe the exoneration. We need to find somebody who's better than our sheriff's department, who's best in the world that we can get.
Robert's prints and the ones found at the crime scene are rushed to FBI headquarters.
The FBI discovered that some parts of the palm print were so thick with blood that it became a negative. It was the opposite of what it should be because of the thick blood. The thick blood looked like the ridges when really they were the valleys of the print.
The FBI reanalyzed the palm print and compared it to prints obtained from Robert.
The next day, the fingerprint lab at the FBI was able to identify in about 24 points of identification, a positive identification of security guard Bob Sellers.
We have to arrest him now. Sellers, at the time that he was arrested, was living in a mobile home up in Brea at the police department. He was presented with evidence that his prints are in fact in the blood there. He didn't come forward right away, but very quickly after he had some lies, he did admit that he did everything that we thought he did.
He was obsessed with her. He found her very attractive. He thought perhaps by going into her apartment that he might convince her of some romantic get-together. He gained entry into her apartment through an unlocked window where he could hear her on the telephone talking with her mother. He stayed in the bedroom, hid as best possible while she talked in the kitchen living room area. Once she got off the phone at about a little after 12, she came into the bedroom. When she saw him, she was thinking, I have an intruder, a man in here, and I'm frightened. And he became frightened and realized that he had to silence her. He pulled out his baton and began striking her. He then went to strangulation.
During the struggle with Savannah, he said that his shirt got bloody, so he had to take it off. So when he went to see Doyle, he had his shirt in his hand so that his replacement would not see the blood on it.
And then he goes home, gets cleaned up, sneaks back in, and then goes into Savannah's apartment. Sellers wanted her sexually. He had to kill her to get that. He did talk about he wanted her to be clean, and so that's why he drug her into the shower and washed the blood off of her and took her back into the bedroom and wrapped her head in towels because she was so badly beaten. So then he just had a body that was clean and he could have his fantasy. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he's trying to sneak out, and that's when Doyle sees him, and that's when, at the spur of the moment, he has to all of a sudden pretend like, oh, I'm here to go to breakfast with you, okay? He almost seemed relieved when he finally was able to confess that he actually did kill Savannah.
On March 29, 1984, Robert Sellers is charged with murder, rape, attempted rape, and burglary.
I think after 5 years, he thought he probably did get away with it. In that time, he got married, started a family. The anguish that he caused with Savannah Anderson's death, he didn't deserve having that extra 5 years.
On November 4th, 1986, Robert Sellers is found guilty of first-degree murder and a special circumstance of rape. But his lawyers win his appeal.
His conviction was overturned on a technicality. The fact that the prosecution could not prove that she was alive during the rape changed the verdict for a life without possibility of parole.
Instead of a retrial, prosecutors offer Robert a deal. He accepts to avoid the death penalty and pleads guilty to first-degree murder. He is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
Here you have a guard, a man, a Marine, placed there to protect the residents, and it turned out he is the one committing the crime. One would not expect the one who is protecting you to be your killer.
It was absolutely devastating when we found out who it was. The irony of it all was the fact that she moved to this beautiful apartment complex thinking she was going to be safe and secure. And it was the security guard that actually did it. It was like, are you kidding? Nobody could believe it.
Authorities don't find anything to link Robert Sellers to the bedroom basher killings. In 1996, Gerald Parker was identified and convicted of those crimes. In 1999, Robert Sellers died in prison.
I do feel there was justice, especially when I found out that he died after he had been in prison.
Dog walkers came across the bin bags.
They find this is a disposal of some body parts.
The brutality of it, it was unbelievable.
It's what the psychos do. It was a massive shock to everybody. Things don't happen like that in a community like this.
People just couldn't believe it. Obviously, it makes you scared.
You think, is there a serial killer on the loose? Is this gang related?
And I got a phone call, and then my world fell apart. They were new, but I didn't know there was anything wrong.
Just south of Manchester, at the start of the River Mersey, sits Stockport.
Well, there's a lot of history with Stockport. There's a church behind here that goes 16th century.
Stockport's quite a quiet town. I grew up there, I was born there, raised there, went to school there, and there was a sense of community and people rallying round. If anything happens, there's a lot of support there, and if you're from Stockport, people sort of stick together from there.
People are very friendly, very nice, very approachable.
On the outskirts of Stockport, nestled amongst the serene surroundings of a leafy country park, is Brinnington.
I think Brinnington's an absolutely fantastic place to live. Everybody is a big family. Everybody looks out for each other, and it is a very tight-knit community.
For those wanting an escape from the hustle and bustle of nearby Stockport, locals can soak up the nature in Reddish Vale Country Park.
The Vale, it is a lovely place. We used to go out, we used to climb up the trees. It's just a kid's wildest dream, isn't it? You can do what you want when you're down the Vale.
You get quite a lot of people fishing down there. A lot of people down there with the dogs and running and things like that. It's lovely, it's really nice.
But the tranquility of this country park was shattered one summer's morning.
It was all in lockdown, and so my granddaughter, she used to walk the dog for us every couple of days. And one day she came back. She said, just going down, she said, there was a big bag of meat there, Gran.
like bin bag, and it was all ripped over. I said, "Oh," I said, "you didn't let our dog touch it, did you?" She said, "No, no, no. I wouldn't let her touch it." She went trying to sniff at it, but I just pulled her back. She did. It didn't look very good. It was all green. She said, "I think it was something from a butcher's." So didn't think anything more about it.
But moments later, another dog walker grows suspicious.
Dog walkers came across the bin bags. They called into the police and reported, that these bags had been found.
Dog walker walking in here sees a black bag and the dog's worrying the black bag. As soon as they open it, they can smell the bad smell. It will be a case of, I think, of what do I do now? And I expect the thing is to bring the police.
Alerted to the scene by a putrid smell coming from the bags, police inspect them, only to make a horrific discovery.
They find this is a disposal of some body parts.
Having identified some human remains in the bags, police secure the scene, and a murder investigation is immediately launched.
So the police officer turns up to the scene, finds parts of a body. Straight away, they'll be thinking, preservation, let's get some specialist teams down here. They've got to then put a cordon in the area so that nobody can come in and take pictures and disturb the scene. Most police officers will have seen dead bodies, but it's an entirely different kettle of fish, isn't it, when you're seeing a body cut up.
News of the shocking discovery quickly spreads, and local reporters rush to the scene.
There was a massive sense of urgency with this. We cover a lot of murders in Manchester, but nothing like this. We were just trying to establish what had happened. All that we knew was that a body's been found, dismembered, in bin bags in a country park. That was just, it was unbelievable at the time.
As the story spreads, the local community struggles to come to terms with what's been found on their doorstep.
It was a massive shock to everybody. Things don't happen like that in a community like this. How could somebody do that? It's absolutely horrific.
It rocked the community, the brutality of it. It shocked a lot of people.
People just couldn't believe it. Obviously it makes you scared, especially if it's just around the corner from where you live.
The shock of it just got about. It was more like when a rumour gets about, how do you drop a bag on the Vale with a human body in it? Do you know what I mean? It's what the psychos do.
News of the crime spreads fast, but the most important question on everyone's lips is, who is the victim?
The police will not know who that victim is at that moment. The family of that individual will not know that their loved one has died. So the police would have been looking at the missing persons register, because it's important to try and get to the family of that individual as quickly as possible.
But there's a problem. The bags contain only certain body parts, making an initial identification impossible. And it spreads fear amongst families in the local community.
For the residents, it was a very, very difficult situation. You might have people whose parents, daughters, sons didn't come home for one reason or the other. So they were being worried that it could have been their loved one.
The police have no idea who their victim is, and are no closer to knowing who could have possibly carried out this sickening crime.
The police will be trying to find the crime scene, because where the body is, the person has probably not been murdered there. They've just been parts of their body dumped there. You think, is there a serial killer on the loose? Is this gang related?
In the Stockport suburb of Brinnington, the community is waking up reeling after bin bags containing body parts were discovered in the local country park.
It's unusual to have a body dismembered. I can only think of 2 or 3 in my service in Greater Manchester.
Massive shock to everybody. You don't expect something like that to happen on your doorstep.
I've never heard anything like it before in my life. I couldn't believe it.
With the fears in the community growing, police specialists move in to examine the area.
There is an urgency taking place. It's like a huge juggernaut moving. They call it the golden hour, and it isn't an hour. It's the time that you're going to get the best evidence and the best opportunities to catch the killer and get main lines of inquiry. You will have police forensic teams sent out to the scene. You will have scientists looking at blood pattern analysis, looking at body deposition. The coroner from the area will be called out. So there's a whole group of people that are going to get involved in this from a very early stage.
News of the gruesome discovery has spread like wildfire, and local reporters are on the scene. But while forensic officers have the delicate task of trawling the crime scene, in a bid to identify the victim, the cause of death, and find clues to the killer, the media frenzy threatens to scupper the investigation from the off.
It's difficult for the police to keep ahead of the media frenzy. The media, they can be down and they can be knocking on doors in the area. So they want to get in there and get the story.
We sent a reporter down there. We spoke to the community, we spoke to neighbours, and then we sent a photographer down there as well.
Photos from the scene are shared online, much to the concern of investigators.
When it got put on Facebook, that's how most people really did find out, through that.
One of the big issues for investigators at a crime scene like this is media and social media. Everybody wants to take photographs. Everybody wants to pass that out. It can be around the world, and let's say it takes 3 days to identify that individual because there's got to be some scientific analysis. Well, the family might have been looking at this for days on end.
With the images spreading online, time is running out before news gets to the family.
There's a number of ways that the police can try and identify an individual. It's been perfected over the years. You've got fingerprints, you've got tattoos, marks, you've got dental, you've got DNA.
Now we're into the phase of looking at that body in detail for marks, for injuries, things like that. As you carry on and dissect to look for evidence, this is all about the detail of what that body is telling you.
After examining the remains, experts find a tattoo on one of the body parts. Could this be key to identifying the victim? Then, suddenly, 9 hours after the discovery, police receive a call, reporting a local resident missing. She is 46-year-old Yvonne McCann, known as Vonnie.
The first thing, obviously, we realise that my sister's missing, and then the second thing we see on Facebook is that body parts have been found. So then, you're putting 2 and 2 together, aren't you?
Yvonne's sister, Helen, had been watching the police drama unfold before her eyes, unaware of the devastating impact it was about to have on her life.
I sat in my garden, looking at the police on the Vale, texting my sister. What's going on? It looks really bad. What's going on? Have you heard anything, Von? I didn't get any response, but I didn't think anything of it. Didn't even know she was missing.
Police request that one of Yvonne's family head to the scene to establish whether the victim is indeed their loved one or someone else entirely.
One of my nephews had been up to see a body part with a tattoo on it, so that proved that it was our Yvonne. I was shocked. I was empty. I had no feelings. I didn't have a tear in my eye. I couldn't cry. I think I was just in disbelief and shock. The way we lost her, the way she was found, the indignity of being found like that.
Early hours of the morning, we'd gone to bed and I got a phone call off my brother Charlie saying they think that's our Yvonne. And then my world fell apart. I was meant to protect her. Never knew, but I didn't know. Didn't know if there was anything wrong.
News that one of their own has been taken from them hits locals hard.
The whole community was subdued for a few weeks, to be honest, because everybody knew Vonnie. When you normally pass somebody and you say hi to them and then suddenly they're not there to say hi to, it was very, very tragic, very tragic.
Yvonne was well known to locals, having lived in Brinnington her whole life.
She was the youngest, you know, she's the apple of my dad's eye, shall we say. She was a lovely girl. She was very mischievous. She was loud, she was bright, she had a great sense of humour, you know, and she was good fun to be with.
She was a baby. She got away with stuff that me and my brother never did. I think they give up. After me and my brother, they must have given up. She used to drive me nutty when we got to the teenage stage, and she used to run after me all the time and want to hang about with me. She was just funny. I wish she could hang about with me now. But at the time, you don't think of that, do you?
During her teenage years, Yvonne found her first love with local lad Thomas McCann.
Yvonne and Thomas were definitely childhood sweethearts. She was about 14 when she met Tommy. From there, she was just always a Tom. Tom was the man.
She was 14 when she met him and he was a few years older. They were both devoted to each other.
A lot of people meet at a young age, and sometimes your first love is just your first love and you grow apart. Well, they never grew apart, they just grew stronger.
In 1996, 8 years into their relationship, Yvonne and Thomas tied the knot and started a family together.
Yvonne had 3 children with Thomas. They were married and Thomas was a family man, hard-working man. He worked as a takeaway delivery driver in Stockport.
She loved him to bits, and he loved her. And they stayed together for all them years because there was a strong bond between them.
However, in 2012, after 24 years together, the relationship sadly came to an end. Yet Yvonne and Thomas remained friends and continued to live under the same roof. And eventually, Yvonne started dating again.
She moved on to a new relationship and things appeared to go well.
He's a nice bloke and he wanted to look after her. He made her feel good.
Life for Yvonne was good. But in March 2020, during the UK's period of lockdown, she moved back in with Thomas, who she was still on friendly terms with, in order to spend more time with her children. But in May 2020, just hours before a planned family barbecue, Yvonne texts family to say she's not coming, and then disappears, prompting her worried ex Thomas to take matters into his own hands.
At that point, Thomas reported that she was missing.
So what could possibly have led this well-known mother to be killed in such a horrific way?
When a body is dismembered, as an investigator, you've got to look at why it's been dismembered. So in this case, it's put in black bin liners and discarded on a park. It's not a case of trying to hide the body. That seems to me to be a knee-jerk reaction. This person doesn't know what they want to do with the body. You know, this is not a criminal mastermind. This didn't look like some kind of serial killer. It's not gang-related where they've taken some time, like you see on some of the films. It is a quick, hurried deposit of some body parts.
Police now begin to suspect that whoever was responsible for this sickening crime was local to the area.
One of the things I thought about on this is there's some science behind where criminals operate. You, I, everybody else will have an area where we operate a daily business. We'll go to the same pubs, we'll go to the same shops, we'll meet the same friends at the same locations. And if you look at that, this is how criminals operate. Because they'll carry out the crime, they'll know places where they feel that they can deposit stuff and they can get away and not be compromised.
With Yvonne's home a mere stone's throw from where her body was found, attention falls on her inner circle.
You want to be with the families very quickly. One, for that reassurance, but secondly, to identify, have they got any idea of how it occurred, who could have done it, or was it within the family? You want to look at possible partners, friends, and people that they've had arguments with. That gives me a smaller pool of people to look at than trying to look at every gang member in Greater Manchester to see whether they've killed this woman.
Police begin by speaking to Yvonne's ex-husband, Thomas McCann. Thomas tells police that he last saw Yvonne on the Saturday morning, 2 days before her body was found. She left home to meet her new partner. Detectives speak to him, but he tells them that Yvonne never turned up. And after some delving into his whereabouts on the day, police rule the new partner out of the investigation. So where had Yvonne gone, and who would want her dead?
We didn't know if she had just had an argument and gone to her boyfriend. We didn't know if she'd had an argument and gone to see a friend. You know what I mean? We didn't know.
As Yvonne's family prepare to say their goodbyes, suddenly police make an announcement.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a woman's body was found on Reddish Vale Country Park earlier this morning. The suspect has been taken into custody and detained for questioning.
It was a big shock to everybody. Nobody ever expected it at all.
It's been a matter of hours since human remains were found in Brinnington, and the body has been identified as that of 46-year-old mum, Yvonne McCann, and police have made an arrest.
One of my nephews knocked on his door and says, I've come to tell you my dad's been arrested for a murder.
Yvonne's ex-husband, 49-year-old Thomas McCann, is arrested and taken into police custody.
It's unfathomable to even think something like that could happen.
And as Yvonne's loved ones try to make sense of this shocking news, the community rallies together to show its support.
Our family's a very well-known family. We were born and bred Brinnington, so it affected everybody. It wasn't just the family, the estate. It affected the estate. People couldn't believe it, you know, and the response, the messages of people, and we had lockdown here. We had lockdown. And even in lockdown, there must have been 300 people on this front. And by the way, they was all trying their best to stay safe. But how can you stop 300 people coming to show their respects?
Despite the incredible support from the local community, the interrogation of Yvonne's ex-husband Thomas in connection with her death continues. So what had led to the arrest of the father of 3 of Yvonne's children? Police had recently learnt that on Saturday morning, 2 days before Yvonne's body was found, there had been an argument between Yvonne and Thomas.
Yvonne and Thomas had argued in the morning. The neighbours had heard them arguing from about 9 o'clock.
They had an argument over a bag of chips, apparently.
She'd messaged her neighbour saying, you know, I've left a bag of frozen chips out, and that was that.
While in custody, Thomas tells police that after the argument over the frozen chips, Yvonne left their home to go and see her new partner. He then tells police the following day he was invited to a family barbecue.
Both him and Yvonne had been invited to a family barbecue by their son. And Yvonne, she'd messaged her son saying she wouldn't go, and there'd been an argument, and there was a few messages exchanged to do with that.
Yvonne's texts made it clear she didn't want to join Thomas at the barbecue, but he still went and stayed there until late in the evening.
He went to walk home. His daughter was helping him home because he was drunk. He passed out. And then that's when his daughter found the rings and I believe her mobile phone in his jacket pocket and began questioning where her mum was.
When confronted by his daughter, Thomas explains why he had Yvonne's possessions with him. And he gives a different story to the one he initially gave to the police.
After, they'd had this argument, he said he met her on Hempshire Lane, which is in Stockport. He said he was going to give her a lift to the new partner's house, and during which she gave him her wedding rings for safekeeping. And that her phone had fallen into the footwell of his car, so he'd got those off her and then dropped her off at the new partner's house.
Her phone and rings were found in his pocket, so that heightens the senses of the SAO that this might be the individual we're looking at.
But the police still have no hard evidence to link Thomas to the crime.
I would be getting a search warrant for that property. You'd want to do a forensic examination in the home. One of the first things I'd be doing when I went in the house would be getting the bath and the plumbing looked at, because there'll be residue in the bath, there'll be residue in the pipes all the way down to the plumbing.
Officers searched Thomas and Yvonne's address, but forensics failed to find anything incriminating.
The house was spotless. From what I can gather, there was nothing found DNA-wise, there was nothing found there in the house that could prove that anybody had been killed in that house.
With no forensic evidence found at the address, police scour local CCTV in an attempt to confirm whether Thomas had indeed travelled to Stockport to meet Yvonne on the Saturday.
Thomas gives an explanation of where he went between certain times. The teams will look at any CCTV to see whether they confirm his story, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to confirm or deny what he's saying.
And in a major breakthrough, police do uncover CCTV focusing on the street outside Yvonne and Thomas's home. But there's no sign of Yvonne leaving the address at any point. Despite Thomas's insistence to police that she'd walked out after the pair had argued over frozen chips.
It was 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. He was seen going outside 4 times, moving things from his truck. Why he was doing that, we don't know. But then from about 10 o'clock, he was inside the house. And then he wasn't seen again until 4 o'clock.
Having spent the day indoors, Thomas McCann is seen leaving the address. But it's what he's seen carrying which really sparks police interest.
Thomas McCann left the house with bin bags.
Has Thomas been caught red-handed on CCTV carrying his ex-wife's remains? Further examination of the cameras shows Thomas returns home at 10:47 p.m. and heads out again just before 1 a.m. Shortly after leaving, his car is spotted on CCTV, parked at Bredbury Recycling Centre on the outskirts of Stockport. Police immediately dispatch officers to the scene.
It was at the recycling centre where more body parts were found.
The body parts are quickly identified as those of Yvonne McCann. Tools, including a Stanley knife, are also discovered at the scene. And Thomas is confronted with the damning evidence against him.
The officers have asked him the questions, he's given him an answer, they've gone away, they've come back and said, come on Thomas, that's not right. And here you are with a load of bin liners. What were you disposing of and where did you take him? People do become upset. A lot of them become angry because they're being found out. The story isn't right. The true craft of an interviewer is to get a person talking. If you can get that rapport going with that individual, you can get that little chink, you know, you need to do this for your kids, you need to do this for her. It can turn it. And that's the true craft of turning somebody to talk to you.
There was 4 police interviews. At the 4th interview, when he was accompanied by a solicitor, he handed in a statement saying, I killed my wife, I've killed Yvonne and disposed of her like garbage.
Thomas McCann is charged with the murder of his ex-wife, Yvonne McCann.
You think, it's something that doesn't happen to you. It's something that doesn't happen in your family. It's something that happens in America. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't happen in Brinnington. Something like that doesn't happen on your doorstep, and it definitely doesn't happen to your sister.
But the question troubling the police is the motive. Why would Thomas murder his childhood sweetheart and mother of his children? 4 days since the human remains of Yvonne McCann were found in a park near the Stockport suburb of Brinnington, the community wakes to the shocking news that her ex-husband, 49-year-old delivery driver Thomas McCann, has confessed to her murder.
Yvonne and Thomas were childhood sweethearts, which I think makes it all the more surprising that this happened, really.
He's not only killed his wife, he's also mutilated her body as well. How anybody could do that, I'll never know.
Ten months after Yvonne's murder, Thomas appears at Manchester Crown Court to enter a formal plea. And the question the family are desperate to be answered is, why did Yvonne's once-loving husband end her life in such a brutal way? Could it really be over a bag of frozen chips?
This was the first that anyone had heard the proper details of the case, and it was the first time in open court that the public would hear of the details of the case, so it was a very tense atmosphere. There was the family sat upstairs in the public gallery at the back, and then Thomas McCann in the dock. Thomas seemed really normal when I saw him in court. He was in a blue suit, he looked quite smart. You wouldn't look at him to think he'd done something like that, but you could say that about any murderers, couldn't you?
My side of the family, we weren't in the same courtroom because of COVID. We wasn't allowed. We was by camera.
I never went to court. I didn't want him to see me, because if he sees me and I show any emotion at all, he's won.
Thomas formally pleads guilty to the murder of his ex-wife, meaning he wouldn't have to give a defence revealing any motive for the killing.
I think Thomas pleaded guilty to stop his family from hearing all the gory details of what went on. That way he didn't have to tell his side of the story.
He knew that a few of the family were going to go to court, so he pleaded guilty, so there wasn't a court case. No one even had a say on the matter.
With Thomas pleading guilty to the crime, the family is denied hearing a motive for the murder. Could the answer lie in their 24-year relationship, which started when they met as teenagers?
I think she just fell head over heels with him. And I think, oh, this is a fairy tale. But it wasn't a fairy tale. Every couple of months we used to say, oh, is Thomas still at home? Going off with every woman he set eyes on. And she'd forgive him over and over and over again.
No matter what you said to her, Bonnie, she wouldn't believe it. My Thomas wouldn't do that. My Thomas wouldn't do that.
Over the years, the strain of the relationship took its toll on Yvonne, and she reached out to her brother and sister for help.
We all said, it'll never be no good. And she used to just fall to pieces. And we used to pick the pieces up. And in the end, you know, you can't keep saying, leave him, because it doesn't work. She had to be ready to do that.
My sister come round our Yvonne and said, you know, can you go and chuck him out, or can you go and have a word with him, can you sort it out? Now, I used to do that for her. Nothing ever involved violence, just strong talking. But you knew you was wasting your time, because within a day or two, he'd be back. So after maybe 10 years of actually trying to sort it out, I did say to her, Yvonne, you know, if you have trouble now, don't come to see me. When you want him gone, get him gone yourself.
Yvonne remained with Thomas. But as the years rolled on, she became more and more vulnerable.
She was a very mentally strong person, don't get me wrong, but, you know, as time went on, she got weaker and weaker as things went wrong. you know, dogs dying, parents dying. When my mum died, she believed a lot in ghosts, Yvonne, and afterlife. She used to go and see psychics and things like that. All of a sudden, all sorts of little things are moving around. You've got all your ornaments and things like that are moving around. Things are appearing from nowhere. And Yvonne's thinking, it's my mum and my dad, you know. And it wasn't my mum and dad, it was Thomas messing around with her head. I think that's exactly what he was doing.
As far as I'm aware, there was nothing physical. There was no physical abuse, but there was something. I think it was like mental torture to her.
Eventually, in 2012, Yvonne built up the strength to end her relationship with Thomas.
She'd had enough, and she wanted out. So she moved out, she moved away from the trouble.
Yvonne then met her new partner. But despite this, Thomas kept a tight grip on Yvonne.
Thomas wouldn't let go. You know, he'd threaten to jump off bridges, things like that. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to jump off this bridge. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to drink this bleach. If you don't stay with me, I'm going to take these tablets.
He was stood on the bridge numerous times near where she lived, threatening to jump. He went disappearing one time. He just disappeared. And then he turned up again. And I think it was constant mind games.
Despite recently moving in with her new partner, Yvonne, concerned over Thomas's well-being, felt she had no choice but to move back in with her ex-husband.
She went back, but she didn't want to be there. She wanted that fresh start. She wanted that fresh start, and she wasn't allowed that fresh start. She couldn't get rid of him. He wouldn't go. That is what happened towards the end.
In March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the UK, and a national lockdown meant that Yvonne and Thomas would be spending more time together than usual.
All of a sudden, you're stuck in the same house together for months. It's going to have effects on some people. For our Yvonne to be spending all that time with Thomas, I don't think it would have been a good thing, you know.
2 months into lockdown, Yvonne pays her brother a visit, which tragically would be the last time he saw her.
The last time I spoke to her was the Thursday before she was murdered. She come round the house, and Yvonne was talking to my wife and saying, you know, he's going through my phone, I wake up in the night or in the morning, he's sat at the end of the bed looking at me. She said, I don't feel comfortable. She knew herself that there was something not right with him. And in that conversation, she actually said to me that if I am ever found dead, it's him that's done it. And that was words out of her mouth the Thursday before the day she disappeared. If I am ever found dead, it's him that's done it.
Days later, on the morning of Saturday the 23rd of May 2020, a neighbour hears an argument coming from Yvonne and Thomas's home. They then receive a text from Yvonne saying the pair were arguing over frozen chips being left out. But was this really the motive for the murder?
All I can think is that he'd lost control of her. Maybe they had the conversation and she said, well, I am going. Maybe that's what triggered it off. Maybe she decided, right, Tom, I'm going, and he thought, well, you're not going anywhere. Makes more sense to me than arguing over a bag of chips. Certainly does. He's the only one that knows.
The motive may be unclear, but police discover what Thomas did next. And it's truly horrifying.
He strangled Yvonne, and then, we believe, using a Stanley knife and some lopping shears, he dismembered her body. I think that's what took so long for him to do. That's why he was in the house for so long.
Police also discover that after killing his ex-wife, Thomas had used Yvonne's phone pretending to be her.
So whilst he was dismembering Yvonne's body, he was messaging the family using her phone, messaging himself using her phone and replying. He was apologising to her about the bag of frozen chips, telling her he still loved her. All this was carrying on whilst he was committing that act.
So he's trying to manufacture a narrative there, so that when he's asked questions, say, oh, well, I was speaking to her at these times, and then these are messages, and if she's died before then, well, she died afterwards.
The court hears that in a prepared statement, McCann had told police he had strangled Yvonne and cut her body up in order to make her go away. He then disposed of her body parts and the tools he had used, and then shockingly joined his family for a barbecue that his son had invited both parents to attend the next day.
He didn't show any remorse. How can that be remorseful? Just carrying on after he murdered and dismantled my sister, carrying on like he'd done nothing. I'll just go and have a barbecue with my family. Just carry on pretending I'm my wife on her phone. No, that wasn't sorry. Can say sorry as much as he wanted in court to the family. That shows me he was never sorry.
The court is also told that only 50% of Yvonne's body has ever been found.
Other parts of the body were still not found. They've not found the head.
The family will never get complete closure in that aspect until she's returned as a whole. There's always that part of my loved one is still out there, and hopefully one day it'll be found.
On the 30th of March 2021, the judge imposes his sentence. Thomas McCann is sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 12 years behind bars.
My side of the family just got up and walked out. I was gobsmacked.
There was a number of things which reduced the sentence. Part of it was reduced due to his guilty plea. Another part was due to mitigating circumstances such as his mental state at the time. He had mental health issues. There was alcohol abuse there. From what we know, he suffered with horrendous abuse as a child in every way imaginable. But you'd think a brutal murder like that, the way he disposed of the body, you know, people who've murdered people in the past have got much higher sentences for doing a lot less than what he did.
What's that message about that 12 years sent out to other people that are thinking of getting rid of the wife because they've had enough of her, eh? Can't afford to divorce her, can't do this, I'll murder her. I'll only get 12 years. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. They should be ashamed of themselves.
I could never forgive him. Never. He took my sister away. He took a part of me away with him that day, and a part of my brother as well.
I could never forgive him for what he's done to not just me, the family. It's what he's done to everybody. It's up to him now to do something with himself. It's up to him to realise what he's done and let him do his time. But when it comes to forgiveness, no, I can't forgive the man. No, I can't. No.
With Thomas now behind bars, the community of Brinnington struggles to come to terms with the horror of what happened to Yvonne.
The neighbours, everybody, even now still feel it. Because obviously, you know, children left without a mum, and it's just thrown their life, probably for the rest of their lives, into turmoil. Very, very sad, very sad.
And Yvonne's elder siblings are slowly coming to terms with a life without her.
The way of moving on is to keep yourself busy. Don't let things get into your head. We're not going to let him destroy my life. my wife's life, my family's life, my kids' life. We're not going to let him do it. We're going to get on and we're going to be even stronger. And that's how you get through things.
I'll never be able to understand why she's no longer here. And the nightmares, the constant lack of sleep since wondering who she was shouting for while he was strangling her, because she'd have been shouting for somebody to help her. And we didn't, and we couldn't, because we didn't know.